The holes on the target were all pretty big. Upon hearing the policewoman's question, the administrator responsible for changing the target was slightly taken aback. Did that mean that the young guy not only hit the target by chance but did so more than once? Unconvinced, he picked up the binoculars hanging around his neck, looked towards the target, and his eyes widened in astonishment, filled with disbelief. Long-range shooting, 6 shots on target? Asterisk, that young man shot a 500-meter long-range target, with only a little over 20 shots in total, and he managed to achieve nearly 1/3 accuracy. Asterisk. Asterisk this. The police department was not like the military, which specialized in firearms. In terms of combat, they might not be too far off, but there were very few who could shoot with such precision. Asterisk. Across all the police stations in the capital city, totaling over 30,000 people, there might not even be 2 handfuls of people who could guarantee a certain accuracy with long-range targets. Truly, how old could that young man be? Could he really have been handling guns since he was in his mother's womb? Question mark. Seeing the administrator's expression change repeatedly, as if discovering Teddy pressing on a Tibetan Mastiff for a frenzied output, the policewoman couldn't help but furrow her brows deeply, then explained, "You don't need to be nervous, I just happened to see the target he shot and casually asked. I have no intention of troubling him. Although practicing something so dangerous isn't great. As long as he doesn't use it during missions, it's none of my business." Ah? Oh. Not really hearing what the policewoman said, the range administrator, coming out of his shock, remembered his previous conversation with colleagues, and his dark face instantly blushed with embarrassment. Asterisk, the guy dared to ask for a 500-meter target because he had confidence in hitting it, while both of us, seeing his youth, arrogantly and insistently urged him to switch to a half-range target, and later we were too lazy even to check it and directly concluded that he couldn't hit it once. Now thinking about it, it's truly shameful. Asterisk. Mumbling awkwardly for a few moments, the administrator, full of shame, left clumsily, heading back to change the target, while the policewoman took this time to look back through the log at the entrance of the range. The previous person, Leon Lane. Seeing that familiar surname, the policewoman frowned even more tightly, forming a delicate little Chuan character. Asterisk, Ryan. Why is it always someone from the Duke of Lionheart's family? Asterisk. The next morning, just as dawn was breaking, the diligent worker Leon once again walked on the way to work, accompanied by the cold wind of late autumn. It wasn't that Leon insisted on getting up this early, but from his family's home in Veteran Lane to the municipal office area where the Purification Bureau was located, it was about 5 or 6 kilometers. If he wanted to walk there on foot, it took almost an hour, so naturally he could only get up early. As for why not take public transport like a trolley or a steam carriage, let's just say that although public transportation was nominally public, the extremely high fare of 1 copper wheel for every 3 kilometers on average already excluded more than 50% of the residents of Capital City from even using it. Although Leon, after joining the Purification Bureau, with an annual income of more than 60,000 copper wheels, could afford such luxuries, the goth cigarettes he bought for Black Goat were absurdly expensive, each pack costing 3 silver wheels, consuming not only the 2 gold wheels of field allowances but also nearly all his remaining money. While braving the cold to walk an hour to work was tough, compared to the hardship of having no money in his pocket, the former was clearly more bearable, and walking to work also wasn't completely without benefits. At least he could get a cup of hot coffee. Boss? A cup of strong coffee, 2 slices of thin bread. Shrinking to avoid the cold wind, Leon skillfully ducked into the coffee stand's tent, carefully untangling the scarf from his neck, and sat at a spot closest to the stove. Nodding toward Leon, a regular. The owner of the coffee stand tightened his apron on the surface but secretly pulled out the drawer containing ham slices, letting the aroma of the meat spread before smilingly asking, "All right, do you want butter with that? Add some ham slices." Staring at the smiling face of the coffee stand's crafty proprietor, Leon hesitated. Asterisk, only requiring coffee without butter, it would cost only half a copper wheel for breakfast. With butter, it'd cost 1 copper wheel, and adding ham slices would require an additional copper wheel. Asterisk. Asterisk the total fare for taking a ride from home to the Purification Bureau was only 2 copper wheels. If he splurged on butter and ham, those 5 kilometers he walked would go to waste. Asterisk. But, smelling the warm and sweet aroma of butter in the air, as well as the sizzling and melting fat of the ham slices, the words no became lazy, refusing to crawl out of his lips. Look, today isn't as cold as yesterday, and there aren't many customers. I've cooked more ham slices than I can sell. Perceiving Leon's struggle, the honest-looking sly proprietor grinned and suggested, "How about this? If you add ham slices today, I'll charge you half a copper will less, just as a special price for a regular customer. You'd also be helping my business. What do you say?" Asterisk add. And slather on the butter thick. Asterisk. In the end, unable to resist the temptation of fat, Leon patted his thin wallet, looked at his scrawny arm, and nodded fiercely, gritting his teeth. Asterisk 3 more days until the Purification Bureau's payday. Accounting for the money to treat the red-haired director to drinks, he estimated having 7 or 8 gold wheels left to bank, so these 2 copper wheels didn't matter. Asterisk. Plus, today, after retrieving the new anomalous object from the director, he still had to go to the water company to investigate, and likely couldn't catch the police department's free lunch. If he didn't eat well in the morning, how'd he have the strength to run field duties? All right. Smiling and nodding, the sly proprietor fished out what little he had left of the ham slices, swiftly drizzling a little homemade sauce over them, placing them on the slate above the charcoal stove alongside the bread. Watching this gesture made the frugal-for-years Leon feel a pang. To make himself feel better, Leon lifted his head, avoiding the sight of the copper wheels heating on the slate, and struck up a conversation with the boss. "Boss, what's your name?" "Charles, same Charles as Charles Department Store." Those running small stalls outside naturally weren't socially anxious. The sly proprietor Charles replied with a jovial smile. "Sir, no need for formal titles. You can just call me Old Charles. Charles Department Store. Charles Company. That name, wasn't it the bastard water company dumping sewage into the public water pipes?" Hearing the name of the power company he was about to investigate, Leon's expression slightly darkened. However, he quickly reacted, realizing it must be a coincidence, just like his own Ryan, where one had collided with a surname and the other with a name. The familiar company name stirred up memories, and thinking of the hundreds of patients still lying in the hospital corridors and the heart-wrenching cries he heard when visiting Anna, Leon's good mood rapidly dissipated. He definitely couldn't afford the medical bills for hundreds of people. After the public water pipe incident, the price of antidiarrheal medicine in the Old Town had skyrocketed more than 50 times, and the specialty supplement that could treat this epidemic was even more expensive, costing more than his entire year's salary could cover. Even though there were only about 400 to 500 severe patients on Red Brick Road, where the pain was unbearable, the epidemic had affected at least tens of thousands of residents in the Old Town. Many couldn't afford treatment and didn't know how many were holding on without money. The only consolation was that the disease from contaminated water was not highly infectious. As long as one didn't directly touch excretions and vomit or stay in a confined space where these substances were highly volatile, most people remained safe. However, the troublesome part was that the waterborne disease seemed difficult to heal on its own. At the very least, a dose of alchemical supplement was needed, but with the income levels in the Old Town, few could afford it. The only solution he could think of to solve this problem was to find evidence of negligence by the Charles Power Company and the Department of Road Administration, and then escalate the issue to higher-ups in the Dynasty Kingdom or provide the information to a bold newspaper to force them to cover the cost of the medicine. And if it still couldn't be resolved in the end, customer. Seeing Leon's contemplative expression upon hearing his name, with emotions flickering on his face, the cunning business owner raised an eyebrow in surprise, then lightly called out, "Customer, your meal is ready, and it's 1.5 copper wheels." Oh. Hearing the merchant's call, Leon snapped back to reality, responded twice, then, while grabbing his money, shook his head with an unpleasant expression. "Sorry, your name just reminded me of something, and you're even older than my father." It's not right to call you by your name. I'll just call you Uncle. Heh. All right. If you're willing to call a small vendor like me Uncle, how could I refuse? After bringing over the coffee and the plate with bread, the coffee vendor, looking at Leon, who seemed thinner and possibly younger than his own daughter, smiled kindly, then pulled over a rickety stool and sat next to him, warmly asking, "Since you're calling me Uncle, I'll boldly ask a couple of questions. When you mentioned the Charl Company just now, your expression wasn't very good. Have you had any unpleasant dealings with that company?" Sort of. After a slight hesitation, Leon didn't mention his plans to investigate the Charl Power Company, but instead talked about Anna being injured in a gas pipeline explosion. So you are the one who refused compensation. Your family has had a tough time then. Hearing Leon's story, the coffee vendor blinked and then sighed. Your sister is already ill, and now you have to deal with this misfortune. How about this? Since you called me Uncle, whatever you order from now on, I'll give you half off. Would you like that? Oh? Wow. Does calling you Uncle work so well? Seeing the coffee vendor across from him suddenly overwhelmed with sympathy, Leon raised his eyebrows in surprise, a bit flustered by this unexpected kindness. Yet, before he could figure out how to respond, the cunning merchant smiled softly, returned half a copper wheel, and added, "Of course, since you called me Uncle, remember to stop by often and support my business. All right?" Got it. Calling you Uncle is like signing up for a membership card with you, isn't it? Honestly, if I were the kind of person who couldn't refuse, no matter how cheap other vendors were, I'd likely feel obligated to stick with your stall. If I had breakfast at a different stall in front of you, I'd probably feel guilty for at least half a week. You really go to great lengths to retain customers, that's why you're successful. Realizing this was likely another customer retention trick, Leon smiled but said nothing more, choosing simply to agree. After all, even though this coffee vendor was a bit pricey, it was definitely the most comfortable stall on the street, and now, with them offering a discount to turn him into a regular customer, there was no reason to refuse. Quickly finishing his bread and ham, and bidding farewell to his newly found uncle, Leon, feeling warm from the inside out, wrapped Anna's handmade scarf around his neck and stepped once again into the chilly autumn morning wind. After he left, a regular, watching by the stove, came over with a cup of coffee and teased with a wink, "Old Charl, I've been drinking coffee at your stall for 7 or 8 years and never seen you, the penny pincher, willingly offer a discount. What got into you today? Unless you're trying to marry off your daughter by getting to know that young man and bringing him into the family." Heh, that's not it. I just felt a connection with the young man, noticing he might be struggling lately, so I thought I'd help out a bit to encourage him to support my business. Waving a hand to dismiss the notion, while watching Leon's departing figure, the coffee vendor chuckled. "But I wouldn't mind. I think the young man seems quite nice, though a bit thin. He's tall enough and has a refined look. And you see, the direction he's heading in, with only the administrative buildings ahead, he must have a proper job. Also, even to a coffee vendor like me, he's always very polite. Yes, quite a good kid." Recalling other details he'd heard from his daughter, Amy, the coffee vendor slightly arched an eyebrow. After chatting idly with the regular for a bit, he returned to his seat, staring at the black canvas top of the coffee stall, and thoughtfully stroked his graying chin stubble. People tend to hide themselves around familiar faces and in familiar surroundings. It's only in the presence of tempting prospects and in the company of strangers, whose lives seem detached from theirs, that they reveal their true selves just a bit. What this boy inadvertently revealed is rather uncommon. Yes, courteous, serious, diligent, and quite sharp. If Amy likes him, I really have no reason to oppose, but the problem is we only accept matrilocal marriages, not patrilocal ones. I wonder if he would agree. Unaware of being considered for a matrilocal marriage, by the time Leon arrived at the Purification Bureau braving the cold wind, he opened the door to his office to see the new anomalous object that the red-haired director had mentioned, a black broom floating in midair. Name: Lazy Witch's Rental Broom. Corruption, Flight, Protection. Appearance: a hardwood broom entirely painted black, adorned with a few crow feathers at the top, along with a persistent light scent of pine, and occasionally small cat paw prints appear on the broomstick. Ability: magic reinforcement, flight, airflow shielding. Cost: every Friday at 3:30 p.m. a feline will knock on your door. Please be sure to host it well. File: a decommissioned broom from an unknown witch who needed it rented out every Friday so she could play flying ball games, leaving her beloved cat in need of care. Hence, an agreement was made with the Lion Subbureau of the Purification Bureau to trade the broom's rental for the user's weekly care of her cat. Evaluation: a simple and practical anomalous object that also allows free cat petting. A favorite of Beverly, the Lion Bureau Director. Contamination value: 0.5. Acquired a usable anomalous object, the heterochromatic badge, Materialist Soul, Crimson. Hidden trait activated. Materialist Soul, heterochromatic, Crimson, cannot upgrade. Wearing effect. Advancement route. Hidden trait. Badge slot +2. Current slot number 5. Total number of anomalous objects required to unlock the next slot 4. Your contamination value has increased. Current contamination value 0.9. After carefully examining the description of the witch's broom, especially noting the 0.5 contamination value, Leon couldn't help but cast a complex gaze toward the black goat on the desk. You really are something else, always boasting about being a formidable great demon, looking down on everyone, yet your contamination value can't even surpass a broom? Asterisk, do you know? If you hadn't just leveled up yesterday, your contamination value would be only 1/5 of this broom's. A broom could match 5 of you great demons. Really? It's just a disgrace. Asterisk. What are you looking at? After making eye contact with Leon, the black goat, with a shoe print on its face, craned its neck and glared at Leon, angrily questioning, "Are you looking down on me? You bastard. We are partners who have faced life and death crises together. When that old man almost chopped you up, I was the one who took the hit for you. And now, just because you have a new anomalous object, you despise me? No, no. Although this guy was indeed annoying, always tempting him to corruption and frequently urging him to do bad deeds, it had truly saved his life. As someone gentle in nature and rather nostalgic, Leon had to silently turn his head and dishonestly lie. You've misunderstood. I don't think you're weak, really, I don't. Then why don't you look me in the eye and say it? If Leon had openly mocked its weakness, the black goat might not have felt so aggrieved, as it had never backed down from any verbal battle. But Leon's sympathetic expression looked just like someone saying, "I was wrong," followed by, "Is that enough?" Instantly piercing the pride of the black goat as a great demon. Stop looking down on the demon. With a thud, the black goat rolled off the table, its mentality crumbling while it rolled on the carpet, screaming in frustration. I really am a great demon, one of the most countable in the abyss. Aha! I believe you, your ability is actually quite formidable. Ah! Driven insane by Leon's attitude, the black goat screamed, You punk! I was ambushed as soon as I descended. My heart, my eye, my stomach, all taken away, and my horns were ruined by that red-haired woman. Don't be fooled by my current state. Just as long as you retrieve everything I've lost, then I'd be the strongest. Top 10. At least top 30 anomalous object in your Purification Bureau. So, you're some sort of demon-themed collection? Although Leon didn't believe the black goat's clearly lacking confidence in being top 30. The possibility of other similar anomalous objects beside the demon horns intrigued him. The effect of the silver badge, Friend of Demons, was an increased affinity with anomalous objects marked by corruption, lowering the consumption when used and greatly enhancing the ability's impact. This meant that those demon's heart, demon's stomach, demon horns, demon's eyes, and similar anomalous objects had a very high affinity with him, allowing him to rapidly enhance his power as soon as he acquired them. Tell me about it. Picking up the goat's head and placing it back on the desk, Leon temporarily set aside his new love and curiously inquired about the old one. How many anomalous objects were taken from you? Where am I supposed to find them? If you're interested, counting the horns, everything on me that could be considered an anomalous object was divided into 7 pieces. Seeing that Leon seemed keen on putting together its pieces, the black goat couldn't help but straighten up and boast energetically. At my peak, my hierarchy was only half a step below that of an evil god. For a top-tier great demon like me, the body itself embodies ultimate sin. My horns are weapons for battle, symbolizing wrath and war. My heart is inflated ambition, symbolizing pride and power. My eyes are twisted will, symbolizing jealousy and rebellion. Also, my stomach stands for hunger and conquest. My tongue is gluttony and desolation. My tail represents sloth and secrecy. Kid, believe me, as long as you piece me together, your abilities can definitely make it into the first echelon of the Purification Bureau. Even that red-haired woman might not be your match. No hurry to piece it together, you're missing pieces. Horns, heart, eyes, stomach, tongue, tail. After counting what the black goat mentioned, Leon frowned suspiciously and asked, "Isn't that only 6? What about the last one?" "The last one isn't important." The words made the black goat hesitate. That anomalous object was completely ruined back then. It's probably still slowly recovering. We'll just look for it when it's ready. Not important maybe, but you should at least tell me what the last one is. Right? Why are you stuttering? Speak up. Why are you hiding the last one? Under Leon's relentless questioning, the black goat, although very unwilling, ultimately revealed the identity of the final anomalous object. The last one is my whip, representing lust and union. Asterisk seriously, can't you see I don't want to say it? Why are you asking so many pointless questions? Asterisk, after glaring at Leon, who was making things difficult for no good reason, the black goat muttered with an annoyed face, "As for how to obtain these, after the ambush, they held me down while I was weak, bit by bit taking parts away. I was afraid of being completely killed, so when they were about to take that one thing, I gritted my teeth, blew it up myself, scattering the other 6 anomalous objects in all directions. So I don't really know where the others ended up. I just remember finding a random host to attach to once I landed, and we fled for our lives, hiding for who knows how long. Until I realized no one seemed to be pursuing us, I started messing around, trying to regain some power, and immediately got caught by that red-haired woman. She wrecked me into this state. What's wrong with you now?" Leon's expression changed several times as he looked at the black goat, moving from disdain to shock, then shock to speechlessness, finally from speechlessness to admiration, which made the black goat suddenly wary, stopping his recollections and asking with alert eyes, "Kid, why are you looking at me like that?" "Why look at you like that?" It had to be admiration. To be honest, just the bold, defiant maneuver you pulled demands respect from anyone, especially any man. After sincerely giving a thumbs up to the black goat, Leon silently calculated its situation and discovered that its reputation as a great demon wasn't just talk. At present, the black goat, or rather the revival degree of Demon Horn, was only at 5%, yet its contamination value was already 0.4. When the revival progress of Demon Horn reached 100%, its contamination value could likely reach 8, 1 point stronger than the red-haired director's Love Without Memory. And if all 7 anomalous objects could be gathered to form a complete demon set, that would be 7 times 8, totaling 56 points of contamination value. Asterisk, even with just 7 points of contamination value, Love Without Memory could block the memory of tens of thousands of people in one go. How powerful would the demon set, with a total contamination value of 56, be? Asterisk. If I get the chance, I'll try to find it. Leon wasn't sure if it was a promise to the black goat or a reminder to himself. After noting the matter of searching for the demon set in his heart, he looked at the time and waved his hand to end the conversation. Next, he took out a shopping bag from Charles department store, which he got when buying goth cigarettes, and skillfully packed the black goat into it. Then, he picked up the broom floating beside him, tentatively grasped the broomstick with both hands, and swung his leg over it. Whoosh! Accompanied by a barely discernible whisper of airflow, Leon's rear didn't fall onto the hard broom handle, but instead touched a layer of invisible airflow, gently lifting him up. At the same time, a hazy air barrier quietly formed about 20 or 30 centimeters outside his body. At this moment, Leon had a faint feeling that this air barrier seemed to be an extension of his own will, capable of changing shape with his thoughts. Besides blocking airflow during flight, it probably had other functions like boom! A short and quick airflow explosion sounded as Leon consciously manipulated it. The originally smooth operating airflow shield trembled slightly and suddenly exploded outward. A chaotic storm instantly ravaged the small office, sending everything that could be blown around flying into chaos. Seeing the effect of the airflow explosion, Leon couldn't help but nod satisfied. Flight, shield protection, a small amount of airflow manipulation. The badge's evaluation wasn't wrong. The director did indeed help him acquire an extremely practical anomalous object. If he added the goat head's early warning, his survival ability was nearly maxed out. Asterisk in future missions, if I encounter danger, I could obscure the opponent's face with an airflow blast, then immediately flip onto the broom and escape under the shield of the airflow. I might even counterattack from high altitude. Asterisk. Not afraid of difficult targeting in high-altitude maneuvers as long as I fly high enough, relying on the hit rate increase provided by the materialist soul. I could just chip away bit by bit, eventually hitting something. With the destructive power of the nail gun, unless the target was someone with reinforced flesh capabilities, getting hit would likely mean game over. Although this variant of kite-flying tactic sounds oddly sneaky, even a bit cheap, I don't possess Senior Emma's undying body. If I can safely use long-range kite tactics, why would I deliberately engage in close combat? After pondering it with a simple brainstorm and confirming the primary tactics for the foreseeable future, Leon resisted the impulse to take a flight and tied the shopping bag with the goat head to the broomstick. Next, he found a long strip of cloth to wrap up the witch's broom, carried the bundled broom out of the Purification Bureau at a brisk pace, heading towards the Old Town Pier according to the day's planned itinerary. As the largest of the 6 hydraulic companies in the capital city, supplying water to the urban area was only one of Charles Power Company's operations. They also manufactured gas storage tanks using hydraulic power, partnered with the Department of Agriculture on irrigation and water diversion projects, assisted the Department of Road Administration with flood protection, drainage, and river dredging construction, and even maintained sewage pipes and drainage rivers, among many other things. This enterprise, funded by Charles Department Store and invested in by numerous ennobled old aristocrats, worked closely with several municipal power departments of the kingdom, far exceeding the concept of an ordinary company, even taking on some municipal functions, making it a veritable giant corporation. A company of this scale naturally wouldn't be randomly built in remote wilderness, but rather on a small plain upstream of the Bunk River, occupying one of the 2 most open and conveniently accessible locations, complete with its own exclusive wharf and ferry. As one of the 3 main rivers running through the capital city, the Bunk River served as the city's major water source and its most vital transport waterway. Numerous docks, ferries, and warehouses lined the banks of the river, with steamships carrying large chimneys traveling back and forth incessantly upon its surface. These industrial-era mechanical behemoths devoured massive amounts of coal and whale oil daily, while spewing rolling white smoke filled with acidic air from their chimneys, transporting goods and passengers until late into the night before resting. After forking out an expensive 3 copper will fare for the boat ticket, Leon, broom and goat head in tow, bent down and drilled into the bottom deck of a 3-story passenger ship. He stood in the budget cabin filled with the stench of sweat and must, illuminated by a single dim steam lamp for over an hour before finally disembarking at Charles Power Company's exclusive dock. You really are. We've never seen anyone as stingy as you. Leaving the crowded dock, after the number of surrounding pedestrians slightly reduced, the black goat, overwhelmed by dizziness, couldn't help but complain. Damned stench. The guy with smelly feet next to you even took off his shoes. Damn it. Our nose is now filled with a rancid odor. I beg you, really, the lower deck stinks to high heaven. When you return after the investigation, could you maybe sit a bit higher up? Sitting higher up is too expensive. Expensive my ass. Seeing Leon still so incorrigible, the black goat couldn't help but rage. We're not asking you to sit in the first-class cabin that costs a silver wheel. We're asking you to sit in the mid-level standard cabin. The standard cabin ticket is only 5 copper wheels. Think about it. Just by spending an extra 2 copper wheels, you'll not only get a place to sit, but also ventilation. Isn't that better than being marinated in the lower deck, that canned sardine can? Listening to the black goat's question, Leon sniffed the rancid smell that attacked his own nose and hesitated for a moment. But after recalling the coffee stall owner with the same name as Charles Company and the warm coffee from the inside out that morning, he ultimately shook his head. Forget it, smelly is just smelly. 2 copper wheels can feed me breakfast for 2 days, and I can even add a slice of fried ham. Screw you. You're just like the ham. Eat, eat, eat. Eat till you're dead. Huh. Seeing Leon determined, intent on taking that damn lower deck on the way back, the black goat could only sniff the ever-present stench in its nose hard, then vow despairingly, "Damned it. Just wait till I get my power back. When that time comes, I'm gonna guard this stinking river, capsizing a boat every time one passes and slaughter all those bastards who take off their shoes in the cabin." Amidst the black goat's curses, Leon, drenched in sweat, carried the bag-wrapped witch's broom and followed the crowd to the entrance of the Charles Power Company. However, he didn't rush to start the investigation but first carefully observed the surrounding situation and walked around the company's outer walls a few times. Sure enough, in a shady alley, Leon found many people dressed in ragged clothes, suspicious looking. After listening to their conversation for a while, Leon didn't directly inquire but instead quietly blended in, indignantly cursing the shamelessness of the power company, resonating with most of the people, who began to angrily curse along. After taking careful note of the grievances of these wounded individuals and collecting a wealth of information, Leon finally headed back to the main entrance of the power company, carrying the broom, and walked in with his head held high. Stop! As Leon circled around the power company, the guard had already been watching this suspicious-looking guy. When Leon finally entered the gate, he blocked him, glaring and intimidatingly saying, "Do you know this place is?" "The security department." Showing his credentials to the burly guard with a suddenly tense expression, Leon sternly demanded, "I'm here to investigate. Take me to see your security department's manager." "Ah? Sure. Recognizing public employee credentials and ranks was a mandatory course for guards at large enterprises like this. After confirming the credentials were genuine and not fake, facing an assistant-level officer, the wary guard instantly became obedient and directly led him to the security department's office without further questioning. The security department manager, after examining the credentials issued by the Purification Bureau, likewise did not, or rather, dared not, doubt Leon's identity and instead inquired about his purpose with a smiling face. Seeing the cautious demeanor of the security department manager, Leon reckoned that if he merely stated the mission was confidential, the manager probably wouldn't ask more and would just let Leon in to avoid trouble. The reason was simple, as the Purification Bureau's credentials were indeed effective. Within the kingdom's 5-tier civil service system of execution, documentation, assistance, and subordination, Leon's assistant-level position was ranked in the 4th tier. Although it didn't sound impressive, it was actually a mid-level within the civil service system. If converted to the kingdom's military, it would equate to an officer commanding a 200-man company. In outer regions, he might even aspire to a deputy position in a local authoritative department. Moreover, with Leon being only 16 or 17 and his rather imposing surname, it was almost as if "Do Not Mess With" was written on his face. Naturally, the security department manager couldn't dare block such a troublesome visitor. After all, if they really angered the other party, even though Charles Power Company had strong backing, it might not intervene on behalf of a minor manager, and any retaliation would have to be borne alone. But, gazing at Leon's overly youthful face, the manager, around 30, slightly twitched the corner of his mouth, a subtle disdain unintentionally showing in his eyes. Not daring to block directly was one thing, but if this level 3 accident handler came with ill intentions, there were many ways to delay him. Hehe, it's not really a big deal. Reaching into a shopping bag, touching the black goat's head, and viewing the security department manager's soul, flickering between compliance and resistance. Leon's expression softened, and he smiled gently. Recently, there have been quite a few disturbances at your company. The department is worried you can't appease these people's emotions, leading them to storm the power company, so they specially sent me to check out the situation. Hearing Leon inquire about water supply issues, the security department manager's heart skipped a beat. He immediately retracted his smile, showing difficulty, and said, "Well, it's not that it can't be told, but the company has regulations for people like us." "Brother, I won't beat around the bush with you." Interrupting the manager's evasion, Leon reached out and pulled out a soft-pack goth cigarette box. With a skilled knock on the box bottom, he popped a cigarette out, mimicking the harmless smile of a shrewd businessman. He handed the cigarette over amidst the mental curses of the distressed black goat. "Tell me directly what's really happening with the public water pipes. I just need an answer. Can you handle this matter or not?" "Well, handle it we can, surely." Eyeing the high-end cigarette pack that cost 3 silver wheels, the manager resisted the itch, chuckling. "It just takes some time, and the final appeasement depends on the compensation plan ultimately." "You better tell me the truth." Seeing the soul of the other becoming disorderly under his pull, Leon narrowed his eyes and sharply raised his voice. "I already saw how bad it is outside when I came. Though you've driven away those blocking your gate, the words, either compensate us for medicine, or come drink sewage on your wall aren't yet cleaned off. Do you think I'm blind? Well, I'm sorry. I'm just a security manager. And as to how many this incident affects and how to compensate, I really don't know. You were not clear, but after you take me inside, you can help me find out. This, although you are with the police department, these matters are company secrets. No matter what, I'm still the security department manager, and I can't just... The reason I came to you and not someone else is precisely because you're the security manager." Leon quietly stepped forward half a step, staring into the eyes of the somewhat flustered security manager, lowering his voice again, speaking in a warm, coaxing tone. "I originally thought I didn't need to remind you of these things, but you don't seem very self-aware. Do you? Old brother, use your brain. If something really happens later, once the mob storms the hydraulic company, will those above let you allow them in? Or will they have you stop them? During the process of stopping them, if blood is shed, or if those patients who can't afford treatment and are carried over end up dying, do you think in the end this matter might be blamed on you, the security manager, acting on your own?" This, after hearing Leon's hypothetical scenario, the security manager's expression couldn't help but change slightly, sweat faintly visible on his forehead. "I'm just following the rules, and besides, there's no certainty it will escalate, and the company may not necessarily." "Stop making excuses. A company that would save costs by directly pumping sewage into public water pipes. Do you think it cares about the life or death of a manager like you?" Glancing at the other's increasingly unstable soul flame, judging that the psychological defense line had wavered, Leon grabbed the security manager's hand forcefully, shoving an entire box of cigarettes into it. Then, he pried open his fingers one by one, pressuring his hand to hold the cigarette box tightly, and leaned in closer, speaking softly like a whisper. "Think carefully. This matter isn't really that hard. There are really only 2 outcomes. The first, I conduct a serious investigation, and you cooperate well. If something happens afterward, the police department can prepare and control the situation early on. You might even gain credit for notifying in time and cooperating well. The second, you deliberately conceal the situation at the hydraulic company, delaying my investigation. If a big mess ensues and the department's reputation is tarnished, I'll bear the brunt of it, while you'll be blamed for inciting a bloody conflict, fired from the hydraulic company, and your family will be sent scavenging in the slums." By subtly limiting the scope of the other's thoughts to either yes or no, Leon who was secretly keeping his heartbeat steady even as it raced furiously, continued speaking steadily to the manager sweating profusely before him. Have you ever been to the slums of Capital City, old brother? Have you seen how people live there? If you don't know, I can tell you. They wear tattered clothes they picked from the trash, even draping themselves with shrouds stolen from funeral parlors. They scavenge trash bins alongside crows and stray cats, digging through toxic alchemical waste dumps for a whole day just to find a few pieces of scrap metal that can be exchanged for half a copper wheel. Moreover, every winter, whenever it snows heavily, the next day's garbage heaps from the Department of Road Administration's cleaning vehicles would mysteriously gain a few lifeless, rigid corpses that even wild dogs can't gnaw. Old brother, think carefully. If you choose this path, will you and your family become one of them this year? After painting a picture of his grim future, watching the opposite party's soul flames billow with towering black fire, Leon, realizing the timing was right, abruptly released his grip, suddenly stepping back more than half a step. Wait! Wait! Boom! Within the security manager's soul, the gray-white defense line thinner than an eggshell was completely burned through by the surging black flames beneath. Leon's sudden retreat without warning seemed to remove the last barrier between him and the slums, causing the pale security manager to instinctively follow, clutching Leon's arm tightly, stammering, I can take you to some less important places, but you can't betray me. If you betray me, you can be completely at ease about that. After once more observing the other's soul state, confirming defense breaking had occurred, Leon, maintaining an outward calm yet having a heart rate nearing 160, smiled and replied with a counter-question. Do you think betraying a security manager like you would bring any benefit to me? Do you think it would make sense to provoke public outcry for mutual destruction? Or to let those above know I obtained information through improper means? Or make it easy for the hydraulic company to accuse me of stealing secrets? Relax, I'm not stupid. Why would I engage in something with absolutely no benefit and full of trouble? You. Looking at the young man smiling kindly before him, the security manager suddenly felt his vision blur slightly, as if seeing two sharp, black-tinged horns hovering above the other's head. Trembling violently, he dared not look at this seemingly simple-minded young demon any longer, quickly turning his head, slightly hunched, leading Leon toward the records room. Resentment, betrayal, jealousy, fear. Kid, you're remarkable. Looking at the almost completely blackened soul of the manager, Black Goat couldn't help but widen its eyes, marveling in Leon's mind. Just listening to a few words from you. How is his soul so deeply stained? Could you possibly possess another anomalous object? But I don't feel anything else there. This isn't the result of an anomalous object's effect, but the result of observation and judgment. Leon took a small bottle of cheap liquor, prepared in advance, from the shopping bag containing the goat's head. He forced down a large gulp despite the unpleasant stench, activated the Martyr of the Wine Country badge, and felt the fear and tension gradually dissipate from his heart. He calmly explained while pressing his hand against the black goat's forehead. Senior Emma once told me, no matter the situation, never underestimate the importance of intelligence. Careful observation, calm thinking, and cautious judgment are the reasons why she has been able to stay safe in the Purification Bureau for 6 years. And before I came in, I specifically observed the injuries of those protesting people and found that the hits were directed at places with thicker flesh. This indicated that the security department personnel had been instructed to control their strength. The most likely person to have given such instructions, especially after a serious incident when they were probably treated as scapegoats, was the security manager. From there, I realized that although he was part of the Hydro Company, his interests were not entirely aligned with theirs. By attacking the areas he feared and separating his interests from the Hydro Company, we could turn him into our helper. Goodness! Never mind all that. Have you already learned to communicate using the soul? You really are a born demon. Feeling the thoughts transmitted to his soul through his fingers, the black goat felt slightly envious of Leon's demon talent. He couldn't help but retort. Asterisk. You guessed it, didn't you? It's the first time meeting him. How do you know he didn't instruct them to go easy out of compassion? And how do you know what he's afraid of? If he really had compassion, he wouldn't have personally gotten involved, and he wouldn't have continued to chase and beat those unarmed people even after achieving the goal of driving them away from the entrance. As for what he's afraid of, his collar is clean, his pants are well pressed, and the family photo frame on his desk with a polo stick in the corner suggests he's someone with a stable life, a happy family, and the energy to pursue his hobbies. Recalling the man in the family photo, hugging his wife and child with a warm smile, and those protesters beaten black and blue in the alley, Leon shook his head with a complex expression and continued to conclude, people like him fear nothing more than the disruption of their peaceful and stable days and the downfall of their social status. So as long as I link the consequences of not cooperating with me to these fears and keep interrupting him, not giving him time to think, he will naturally surrender bit by bit. Damn. Compared to you, I am like a fake demon. Asterisk trying to use his not-so-bright mind to think and not finding any obvious flaws, the black goat was slightly discouraged, smacking his lips at his uselessness as a demon. Yet soon he regained his excitement, with a pleading look, asterisk. Leon, when you betray him later, can you bring me along too? Ah, hee. Falling from the stable realm of humans into hell because of weakness and cowardice. That's really interesting. I'm growing to admire you even more. Why aren't you saying anything? Waiting for a long time without getting a response from Leon, the black goat was taken aback. Then said in exasperation, you won't go soft because you realized he has a wife and kids too, will you? Damn it. Can you wake up a bit? He's a lackey of the Hydro Company. He has led people to beat those who came to demand compensation. Kid, weren't you thinking of enforcing justice? Then go for it. Once the Hydro Company's issues are investigated, report and betray him ruthlessly. Then step on his head with your shoe, with an arrogant face, and tell him why you did it. Next, let him experience what true despair is in the hellish human world. Let's see how things go. Shaking his head slightly, Leon sighed and said, can't you also see his soul? Though he isn't a good person by nature, the dark side of his soul is not significantly larger than that of an average person. It's generally at the same level and even emits a warmth. If it turns out he did many dirty things for the Hydro Company, when the time comes to sell him out, I definitely wouldn't hesitate. But to directly ruin him or even his entire family's lives without even knowing his name seems a bit rash. What's the matter? Seeing a dark flame suddenly surge in the soul vision and feeling the black goat's deep-seated desire, Leon was about to inquire further when his mind was suddenly filled with the black goat's hysterical scream. My heart. It's my heart. Forget about being rash or not. You'd better turn back. Someone in the room we just passed touched my heart. What? After hearing the scream of the black goat, Leon was taken aback. He had just heard about the demon's suit before setting out. And now, less than 3 hours later, he had actually found the whereabouts of one of the sheep offals? Was his luck really that good? Under the anxious urging of the black goat, Leon squinted and thought for a moment. Instead of barging directly into that room, he first glanced back at the nameplate on the door and then stopped the security manager to ask, when I was passing by the meeting room at the back earlier, I seemed to hear someone talking about the public water pipe. Who's inside there? That's meeting room number 2. As for who's inside, let me check first. Having had his psychological defenses breached, the security manager was selling out the company without any burden, directly pulling out a visitor itinerary from his chest pocket and flipping through it quickly. Found it. It's representatives from the Department of Road Administration's Waterway Bureau, the Ministry of Agriculture's Water Conservancy Bureau, Charles Department Store, and the old noble families like Lionheart Lion, Tower Shield York, and Rose Marseille. According to the itinerary given to me, they have occupied that meeting room for almost 3 days now. They must be discussing compensation. Huh? Was it really related to the water pipe? Leon originally just wanted to find a reason to gather some information about the sheep offals. The thing about hearing discussions related to water pipes was naturally made up. Unexpectedly, by a twist of fate, it turned out that the people in that meeting room were genuinely related to the public water pipe incident. After marveling at his own luck, Leon pointed to the meeting room behind him, then slightly curled his lips, showing the security manager a knowing smile. This I really can't do. Seeing Leon's expression, the security manager couldn't help but shiver. Then, with a bitter face, pleaded, I'm just a small manager in the security department. Taking you to the archive to look over records is my limit. I truly can't blend in there. The people in that meeting, they're not people I can get in touch with at all. Someone like me doesn't even have the qualification to look at the meeting records. Don't worry. I'm not asking you to help me blend in, just wanting to alert you to some security issues. After patting the security manager on the shoulder, Leon gently reminded, Your company has had quite a few issues recently. Those wild protesters outside just came to cause trouble again today. You should be vigilant. Like right now, the Department of Road Administration, Ministry of Agriculture, Charles Company, Old Noble families. With so many important guests involved in the meeting, how can there be no security personnel on duty at the door? Seeing the security manager's thoughtful expression, Leon requested, In your security department's duty room, there should be spare uniforms, right? Get me a set that fits. Having one guard might seem odd. Better call another guard with a straightforward character who doesn't talk much to come over and stand watch with me at the meeting room. How about that? After hearing Leon's request, the security manager couldn't help but pause his breathing, instinctively hoping this demon would have less contact with people who might expose his identity, biting his teeth and proactively suggesting, How about I stay with you here? No, you are a manager in the security department. How can you stand guard personally? Besides, you have more important tasks to do. Having outright rejected the security manager's suggestion, Leon calmly instructed, While I'm standing guard here, please go to the archive room and find a way to bring out the relevant files. For the documents you can't bring out, transcribe the key parts and place them in your office. I'll come to get them after my guard duty ends. To avoid taking the wrong thing, place them under that family photo on your desk. Oh, by the way, looking at the badge on the uniform in the photo, it seems your wife is a teacher at Victor Parish Elementary School. If I'm not mistaken, your daughter should also be studying there. Under the security manager's suddenly terrified gaze, Leon withdrew his hand from his shoulder, smiled gently, and encouraged with his eyes. How wonderful, a daughter so lively and cute. A wife who's both gentle and beautiful and is a distinguished teacher herself. And you being a middle-tier employee in a major corporation. Your life is more well-off than 90% of people in the capital city. So promise me, be a good husband, but even more, be a good father. Never let them down. Okay? Sorry, I can't agree to this. Having reviewed the 7th revised compensation proposal in his hands, the middle-aged man with long blonde hair shook his head, calmly refusing. Since the start of raising funds for the renovation and expansion of the municipal water pipes, our Ryan family has invested a lot of money in each round, and the dividends in the past 2 years have barely broken even. If we proceed with this compensation proposal, not only would this year's dividends be entirely deducted, but we would also have to return last year's dividends. Our Ryan family will not accept this. The York family also disagreed. The Marseille family opposed. With 3 out of 6 directors rejecting, it seems there's no necessity to continue with this round of voting. After seeing the expressions of everyone in the meeting room, the host shook his head and turned to the middle-aged woman with an unpleasant look, saying, Mrs. Charles, although you invested the most in the water company during its formation, I still suggest you revise the proposal. The naive solution you hope for will never pass. Revise? How should this proposal be revised? It wasn't clear whether she was worn out by days of wrangling or angered by the irony implicit in the host's words. The middle-aged woman, still beautiful despite the crow's feet at the corners of her eyes, suddenly stood up and, faced with everyone else's cold gaze, raised her beautifully arched brows and angrily questioned, We only take 3/10 during dividends and have to bear 5/10 during compensation. How else do you want to modify it? Do you want Charles Department Store to shoulder it all? Mrs. Charles, please calm down a bit. After the middle-aged woman vented her anger, the middle-aged man from the Ryan family, with a neutral demeanor, lightly tapped the table with curled knuckles and said, "We are not asking Charles Department Store to bear it all, only disputing the way the compensation is carried out. Instead of finding those so-called victims one by one for compensation, we prefer it to be handled with more flexibility. For instance, separating out the other 5 businesses excluding water supply, energy, irrigation, sewage, etc., then establishing a new company, having Charles Power Company compensate all the money, and then letting it directly close down." Watching the woman's furious eyes across from him, the middle-aged man leaned back into the sofa, calmly adding, "Since it's the water supply business having the issue this time, the compensation should be limited to the profits obtained from the water supply business. There's no need to involve other parts of the water company. Personally, I find this a very reasonable outcome. What do you think? I thought you were trying to kill me." Looking at the approving eyes of the other directors in the conference room, the chest of the middle-aged woman suddenly began to heave violently, as if all the blood in her body was rushing backward to her head. Her tightly clenched hands were as cold as a dead person's. Directly bankrupting Charles Power Company could indeed avoid most of the compensation, which seemed like a good plan for all the directors, except for her own Charles Department Store, because the power company also bore the Charles name. Once she actually agreed to these people's proposal and let the Charles Power Company go bankrupt, most of the resentment would fall on her own family. What would happen next was easy to imagine. The angry populace couldn't attack the Department of Road Administration, nor could they boycott the 3 old noble families, but they could boycott the business of her other companies and assail the Charles Department Store branches spread throughout Capital City. Even though her department store currently occupied more than 70% of the market share in Capital City, as soon as the influence of this matter spread, each store would immediately become deserted, subject to endless harassment and even theft and robbery. You wish. Seeing the other directors' expressions, a mixture of coldness and implicit mockery, the elegantly dressed middle-aged woman took several rapid breaths, then tightly clenched her fist and slammed it on the table. "Don't forget we are the biggest investors. Moreover, you all signed an agreement at the start that our Charles Department Store has a veto power. As long as I disagree, none of your proposals can pass. If this is the answer you're giving, then I can only express my regret." After glancing at the hysterical appearance of the middle-aged woman, the middle-aged man from the Lionheart family shook his head. With his fingers interlocked and leaning back on the sofa, he said calmly, "Since you insist on giving unreasonable compensation and can't reach a consensus on business philosophy with everyone, the Ryan family will just withdraw. Also, according to the initial contract, we are going to conduct a round of voting next. If the vote passes, we can still take this year's dividends, but looking at your expression." After looking at the woman's bloodshot eyes, the middle-aged man from the Lionheart family shook his head and said, "Forget it, there's no need to waste time. The Ryan family is giving up this year's dividends, and we wish all those who stay the best in managing the company. You're just being unreasonable." Seeing someone actually choose to flip the table at this time, the middle-aged woman couldn't help but say angrily, "This year's dividends aren't even enough for half of the compensation. Besides, the water supply issue was obviously under your control, and now that something's happened, you actually have the nerve to walk away." "Ahem. Mrs. Charles, that's not correct." The old man with a rose emblem embroidered on his chest cleared his throat and leisurely reminded, "While your veto power can decide whether the proposal passes, it certainly can't decide others' participation, right? Additionally, I'm sorry, I cannot accept your proposal, and likewise the Masoni family is withdrawing. We wish you all the best in your endeavors. The York family is withdrawing as well. You. Seeing the 3 old noble families collectively shirk their responsibilities, clearly having colluded in advance, the cornered middle-aged woman instinctively turned her gaze to the other 2 families. "Sorry. This event is a natural disaster unrelated to our Department of Road Administration. After looking sympathetically at the frantic middle-aged woman, the official from the River Bureau of the Department of Road Administration shook his head and said, "Though the dam of our department was breached, the direct cause of the accident was still that the power company didn't operate according to procedures. Our Department of Road Administration will not allocate funds for compensation. Our Department of Agriculture is the same." The official from the Water Resources Bureau of the Department of Agriculture also shook his head and said, "Our Department of Agriculture is not involved in the water supply business. Even if I apply for funding from above, it won't be approved. So all we can do is report this year's power company's losses and relinquish dividends. As for the rest, I'm afraid I'm powerless." So, in the end, it's all dumped on me, isn't it? You can't leave. Seeing the people in the meeting room preparing to get up and leave, the middle-aged woman, burning with anxiety, couldn't help but grit her teeth and stomp hard. If you leave, it means abandoning other parts of the business besides water supply. Not only will there be no dividends in the future, but you also won't see a single penny of the money for the initial construction of the plant. Since we've decided to withdraw, we're naturally prepared for these things. Upon hearing these words, the middle-aged blonde man raised his eyelids slightly, reminding calmly, "Mrs. Charles, you seem to have forgotten that most of the business of the power company was brought in by us, and without anyone purchasing your products, even the most robust production ability is meaningless. After exiting the Charles Power Company, we can easily start up a new company with the same business, or even wait for the Charles Power Company to go bankrupt, then purchase its remains at less than a tenth of the original price. Oh, and also," seeing Mrs. Charles' face, which was turning pale as she subconsciously gritted her teeth, the blonde middle-aged man's lips slightly curled up, showing the first hint of expression on his usually expressionless face. "Apart from the power company, the three of us are also very interested in the department store business. And when the department store we are planning is completed, you and Mr. Charles are welcome to attend the ribbon-cutting ceremony." You did this on purpose." Looking at the smile on the blonde middle-aged man's face, the woman's mind was electrified, and her entire body began to tremble. No wonder such a low-level accident occurred. Turns out this whole thing was aimed at our family from the start. The money for starting the power company had locked down her family's funds, and now with the incident happening right before they broke even, the huge compensation combined with the utterly ruined reputation was enough to drive her department store into a corner, forcing it to relinquish its market share. Moreover, rather than the 3 days of negotiations failing to reach an agreement on a compensation plan, it was more likely intended to delay her response time, allowing the whole matter to spread and ferment. They even allowed those protesters to come near the power company and then had security department personnel beat them, but without completely driving them away, also to escalate the situation quickly. "No, this isn't right. It goes beyond that." Seeing those directors who used to respect her greatly but now had nothing but ridicule in their eyes, the middle-aged woman felt dizzy, and she suddenly stumbled. Back then, they clearly didn't need her family's participation, and they could have established the power company without involving the Charles department store, which meant unnecessary free money for her family. So, it was a setup from the beginning. From the moment they roped her into investing and branding the power company, their goal hadn't changed. It was always to swallow her department store. How could I be so stupid? Mom? Seeing that something was wrong with the middle-aged woman, the young girl with a doll-like face who was behind her hurriedly stepped forward to support her. And when she realized that her mother suddenly rolled her eyes and kept mumbling incoherently without uttering a clear word, the doll-faced girl's expression changed drastically. Her voice suddenly tinged with tears. "Someone! Please! Someone come quickly!" Hearing the cries coming from inside, Leon, who was standing guard outside in a small uniform, blinked in surprise. A few hours earlier, he had just learned of the Seven Sheep Tavern news and unexpectedly discovered the whereabouts of one of them. In an attempt to gather information, he had blurted out a random line, only to stumble upon the board meeting of the water company. He was just pondering how to get inside and see who was who when suddenly, an incident occurred in the conference room. A somewhat familiar female voice started crying out for help. Was my luck too good today? Coming. Temporarily putting aside thoughts of luck, Leon, after laboriously pulling open the heavy oak door, rushed into the conference room, and the excited shouts of the black goat echoed in his mind. To the right, that little blonde. He's the one who touched my heart. Blonde. The Ryan family had been blondes for generations, and at the moment, there was only one blonde person in the room. So, the black goat's sheep organ was with the Ryan family? Pretending to glance casually at the middle-aged blonde man, memorizing his physique and appearance, Leon slightly lowered his head, using the brim of his hat to cover most of his face, and then quickly moved toward the woman who had fallen on the left. Quick! Not noticing that the security guard who had come in was a familiar face. And looking at her mother who had already started convulsing, the panicked, baby-faced girl grabbed Leon's arm and cried out urgently, "Go find a doctor! Quickly get someone to carry her up and don't move her yet." After just glancing at the situation of the middle-aged woman and recognizing what appeared to be epilepsy, Leon hesitated whether to help, worried that intervening rashly might expose his identity. But recalling what he had heard while standing guard outside the door, that this lady of Charles department store seemed to be responsible for the public water pipe incident's compensation, and to prevent the compensation issue from becoming more complicated, Leon ultimately stopped the baby-faced girl. By guiding her to lay the middle-aged woman flat, turn her head to the side to prevent saliva from choking her airway, Leon stood up and looked around, then tore a piece of lining from the sofa cushion beside him, rolled it up and placed it between the middle-aged woman's teeth. That's about right. Slightly lift her chin, and loosen any tight areas of her clothing to keep her breathing smooth. Okay, I'll do it now. In emergency situations, what people fear most is not clear danger but not knowing what to do at all. Instinctively following Leon's instructions, after completing a series of procedures, the baby-faced girl, who was facing the only person who provided the what-to-do answer, instinctively looked at Leon with tearful eyes and asked, "Then what? What else should I do?" "Then wait a few minutes and see if she can calm down on her own." Leon turned and instructed another temporary guard to fetch a small cart just in case, then squatted down and comforted her in a low voice. "I've seen this illness before. As long as nothing chokes the airway or she bites her tongue, she usually comes around in a few minutes. If it doesn't improve, maintain this position while pushing her to find a doctor. There generally won't be any life-threatening danger." "Okay. Thank you. Thank you." Hearing there wasn't a life-threatening danger, the baby-faced girl's hanging heart finally settled down. Feeling weak in her knees, she fell backward with a thud, landing on the carpet like a little duckling. She continued to hold her mother's chin while tearfully thanking Leon repeatedly. Although it seemed complex to describe, it actually took less than a minute. Once it appeared that the middle-aged woman's condition was under control, the other people in the room, who had been stunned by the unexpected situation, also breathed a sigh of relief. Conspiring to embezzle Charles department store's assets was ultimately just a business matter. Even though there were a number of illegal operations involved, their confidence in their combined power to suppress any counterattacks from the other side remained. However, if Mrs. Charles had died of a sudden illness from anger right there, the situation would have been entirely different. It wasn't like the old days, where a noble title could crush businesspeople into powerlessness. If things really got out of hand, triggering unified opposition from the business association, their three families would probably face a collective boycott from businessmen. The business association also had a considerable number of congressional seats, making them a formidable political force not to be underestimated. If this group felt threatened and united, coupled with the machinations of Mr. Charles, the vice president of the business association, they would probably face a serious backlash. Well done. Seeing a potential storm dissipated in advance, several directors were overjoyed. The meeting host of the water company heaved a sigh of relief and spoke to Leon with a beaming smile. "Your salary for this month is doubled. Go to your departments." Looking at this peculiar employee, dressed in a security uniform but holding a big broom, the host furrowed his brow in confusion. Which department are you from? Security or cleaning? Security. I'm with the security department. Leon once again put on the honest smile he had learned from the old man at the coffee stand, lowered his head a little shyly, and said with a simple look, "There have been disturbances outside these days. Our manager is worried that someone unsavory might sneak in and disturb the guests, so we were arranged to stand guard outside. In case of an emergency, we could also lend a hand, which came into play today." Very good. Nodding in satisfaction, the meeting host waved his hand dismissively and added, "Since you're with the security department, find your manager, Andrew, and tell him your salary for this month is doubled. After that, it will be increased by 30% from the base. That's all, you're dismissed." All right. Although he was quite displeased with these sons of bitches in the room, since he had obtained news, confirmed the whereabouts of one of the sheep organs, and would soon have evidence of the water company's violations, Leon wisely opted to retreat while ahead. Adjusting the brim of his hat, he grabbed the broom and tried to leave. Yet, something strange happened. Just as Leon was turning to leave, the sheep's head in the shopping bag swayed ever so slightly. The sharp horns slashed through the bag, tumbling out and landing right on the carpet, directly facing several directors. Oh. Why does this scene seem a bit familiar? Sorry about that. My wife loves sheep head soup. I bought this at the morning market to take home after work. With an unflinching lie, the same poor one as before, Leon swiftly bent down to pick up the sheep's head, intending to make a quick exit while the others were stupefied. Unfortunately for him, his security uniform's jacket was a bit short, with the pocket positioned oddly high. As Leon bent over, the documents originally tucked in his chest pocket bizarrely slipped out. Bouncing happily on the carpet a couple of times, drawing a mischievous arc, Leon's identification fell right before the directors. The unique police department insignia shimmering brightly under the lights. That wasn't even the end of it. At this particularly crucial moment, there came a muffled thud from outside the conference room door. Looking at the abruptly opened conference room door, the prominent guest lying on the floor foaming at the mouth, and Leon reaching down to pick up the police department's identification, the security manager, who had just come back from the file room, instantly broke down, throwing aside the files in hand and pointing at Leon as he screamed in horror. "It wasn't me. He made me do it. I know nothing. I really was screwed by the black goat." Leon couldn't believe how, just a moment ago, everything was going smoothly, but within seconds he managed to completely blow his cover in 3 different ways. He muttered a curse under his breath, then swiftly grabbed the broom and darted out of the conference room door, coming face to face with the security manager, who wore a vicious expression. You're finished." With a fierce kick, Leon landed a blow square on the security manager's face, sending him flying back along with the rest of his words. Leon then scooped up the file from the floor and charged headlong out the door. By this point, even the most clueless person should have realized something was wrong. 5 or 6 shouts of varying tones echoed almost simultaneously within the conference room, ultimately merging into a symphony that condensed into a single phrase. "Catch him. You'll never catch me." Although things had suddenly gone sideways, Leon felt completely unruffled inside. Because, beyond the calming effects of Martyr of the Wine Country, he had the wisdom imparted by Senior Emma. Instead of thinking about how to complete the mission, you should first consider your escape plan in case of failure. So, when entering the hydraulics company, Leon had already scoped out the layout carefully, planned his escape route in advance in case he got found out, and was utterly untroubled by the thought of being caught. After quickly assessing the situation in his mind, and considering that there was a security team at the main entrance to ward off protesters, Leon didn't run toward the nearest door. Instead, he took off in the opposite direction, sprinting deeper into the company. "Stop him! Seize that person! Don't let him get away!" Amid the chaotic shouts, as if a snowball was rolling downhill, more and more people picked up the chase behind Leon, almost entirely blocking the corridor. Due to carrying a bunch of items, Leon couldn't pick up much speed and was quickly chased down. A few of the security guards, who were in peak physical condition, were only about 3 steps away, still able to keep shouting loudly while chasing him down. "Drop those things. There's no way through up ahead. Stop. You can't escape anymore." "Who said I was going to run away?" Leon glanced back at the pursuers, seeing that they were getting perilously close. Already prepared, he narrowed his eyes and gripped the handle of the witch's broom tightly. Boom! A shield meant to block airflow shattered explosively, and in the enclosed room, a bizarre storm suddenly kicked up, absurdly only targeting the lower half of the body. The security guards running behind Leon, already leaning forward as they ran, were knocked down like falling stalks of wheat by the evil wind. They fell onto the floor, some hitting their heads hard enough on the tiled flooring to bleed or even pass out. Although those following weren't directly blown over by the gust, they tripped over the downed guards in front and ended up rolling into a tangled mess on the floor, blocking the way for the people behind. The number of pursuers was suddenly halved. "Damn it! Go around. Move it. Don't block the way. He's going upstairs." One cannot deny that the physical fitness of the hydraulics company's security staff was quite impressive. A few managed to keep their balance and didn't fall, merely delayed for a moment. The ones who hadn't fallen too hard soon got up, gritted their teeth, and rushed back into the chase, following Leon into the stairwell. However, another confounding event occurred right then. Leon burst into the stairwell like a monkey returned to the forest. His already somewhat thin body seemed as light as paper. With just a single leap, he practically flew up the stairs. He grabbed onto the railing with his free hand to stabilize himself. Then, deciding that wasn't fast enough, he tucked the goat head and folder into one arm and the broom under the other, and astonishingly jumped into the gap between the stairs. In the stunned eyes of the security guards who were watching him as revered as a deity, Leon, who wore the same uniform as them, didn't even bother using the stairs. Instead, he began to scale upward through the stairwell gap, like a swimmer slipping through water. It was as if the surrounding air wasn't just empty space but was buoyant like river water. His not-so-bulky frame barely needed to contract and extend its limbs to gain leverage on the railings and stairs, springing nearly 2 meters upward effortlessly, more nimble than a man clutching empty barrels floating up from the sea. Why are you all just standing there?" The event manager, pale-faced, wheezed as he ran into the stairwell and saw the security guards standing dazedly. Looking up, he couldn't help but furiously roar, "Chase him down for me." He took records from the file room. "Even if you all drop dead here, you must." "Ha!" The sight of Leon, who ascended the 6th floor monkey-like, then kicked through a window to fly out on the broom, momentarily made the event manager forget to breathe. His previously furious face alternated between red and white, before eventually turning a faint shade of purple. "Ha! Ha ha ha! I never expected it. My heart is actually in the capital city." Ignoring the oncoming gale, the black goat strapped to the broom handle grinned widely in exhilaration. "Kid, you're really lucky. I just mentioned it casually, and you bumped into one right away, and it was even the strongest heart around. Kid, you need to get stronger fast. Once you're powerful enough, in just an hour, we could wipe out the entire Ryan family and snatch my heart back." Speaking of luck, accustomed to ignoring the black goat's demonic remarks, Leon couldn't help but frown as he recalled the recent events. "Don't you think today has been a bit strange?" "Ha! Up until I left the conference room, my luck today was astonishingly good." Straddling the broom, Leon extended his hand, counting each coincidence on his fingers. "I wanted to find your goat, anomalous object, and I immediately got the information. I wanted to understand the hydraulics company's compensation plan, and I instantly found out about the board meeting. I wanted to sneak in to see who had touched your heart, and something immediately happened. Oh, and also..." Feeling the pocket on his security uniform, Leon furrowed his brows. "It's one thing that you fell out of the shopping bag. The movement was a bit vigorous, but the pocket is peculiar. To ensure I didn't lose my ID, I specifically secured the button on the pocket, but just as I bent over, the thread on the button broke at that exact moment. sending my Purification Bureau ID flying out. And that security manager, he had to appear at the most inopportune moment. Had he been a moment earlier or later, nothing would have happened. There are just too many coincidences today, right? Asterisk, it does seem a bit ridiculous. And the instances of good luck and bad luck are equal. I get it. Asterisk. Squinting in thought, the black goat confidently declared, "Kid, today must be your birthday." Oh? Asterisk, birthday? My birthday isn't for a while. And what does that have to do with anything? Asterisk. Heh. It's the blessing your Purification Bureau stole from the Master of Starry Skies. Noticing Leon's confusion, the black goat chuckled and queried back, "You don't think the 87 branches of the Purification Bureau were just randomly named, right? Kid, let me tell you, your 87 branches are a conceptual anomalous object themselves, something like Star Atlas protection, if I recall correctly. The effect of that thing grants Purification Bureau employees the protection of the corresponding constellation on their birthday, giving them a wish fulfillment ability akin to dreams coming true. Of course, this ability is a degraded version and can only help you achieve goals that were already possible. Wanting to become world king, for example, would yield nothing. But that can't be right, can it?" Upon hearing this, Leon instinctively furrowed his brows and shook his head, denying it. Wish fulfillment would represent good luck. But I've experienced as much bad luck as good today. Having misfortune is part of the deal. Did you really think the Master of Starry Skies had no temper? Recalling something particularly amusing, the black goat laughed. Though forced to give their blessing, the Master of Starry Skies is quite petty. They countered with an equivalent curse. Employees of your Purification Bureau using this blessing on their birthday will face several misfortunes after achieving their goals, tying up the balance, so to speak. It seems to make sense. Reflecting on recent events once again, Leon initially nodded slightly, but then quickly shook his head, frowning. "But my birthday has passed. It's definitely not today." "You're saying your birthday isn't today? Seriously?" After hearing Leon's doubts, the black goat couldn't help but retort, "Come on, either you remembered wrong, your parents made a mistake, or the person who registered your birthday in the kingdom messed it up. Your birthday must be today." "But..." "Stop overthinking it. There's no but." With certainty, the black goat countered, "Do you think it's more likely that you, your parents, or that registrar got the date wrong? Or that a true god made a mistake with the Star Palace alignment for you?" Well, that makes sense. After recalling his birthday from his past life and confirming it didn't match, Leon had eliminated all possibilities he could think of. He had no choice but to agree with the black goat, thinking it must have been his sister who got his birthday wrong. As for why he thought it wasn't himself who was mistaken, that was obviously because he didn't remember anything at all. 3 years ago when he arrived, he was a complete blank slate. He didn't even remember his own name until Anna told him. Asterisk. It's better to ask her again later. Asterisk. Although knowing the exact day of his birthday wasn't that important, if he could really use this Star Atlas protection to gain a degraded version of wish-fulfilling abilities on his birthday, then it would be worth confirming. After making a mental note of this, Leon pulled out a folded piece of parchment from his pocket and started scribbling with a piece of charcoal. Practice shooting, earn the badge, reached bronze. Visit the nurse named Hannah, discovered happiness apartment. Buy cigarettes for the black goat, earn devil's badge. Reached silver but ran out of money and couldn't buy more. Investigate the water pipe incident. Try to collect evidence of illegal operation. Find the black goat's 7 Sheep Tavern. Asterisk. Looking at it this way, I've almost completed everything I wanted to do. Asterisk. Satisfied, Leon put a checkmark next to the water pipe incident and drew a heart next to the Sheep Tavern entry, indicating he had found the whereabouts of Yang Xian. He then squeezed the witch's broom with his legs and added 3 more items to the parchment with the charcoal. Look into the Ryan family's blonde, middle-aged man. Gather news about Yang Xian. Confirm his birthday with Anna. See if he could use the birthday luck next year. Find a well-connected and bold newspaper. Leak the water pipe incident without revealing his identity. Asterisk. That's it for now. Asterisk. After pondering over the parchment for a moment, Leon thoughtfully circled the words newspaper with black. Asterisk. Just enough time for today. Let's visit a few newspapers soon, buy a few papers, and read their news selections. See which one dares to stir things up. Asterisk. Even though the document theft at Charles Power Company was no small matter, it was barely a ripple in the ocean of a megacity with over 10 million people. The capital city continued to function smoothly and steadily. As the sun slowly sank westward, this city, known for being made of factories, smog, and a sea of people, gradually started to fall silent. As the din and roar of machines quieted down, countless hard-working and weary industrial workers filed out of the factories. Under the dim streetlights, they trudged home, faces lined with exhaustion. Isn't Leon done with work yet? Without waiting for Leon, Anna carried her change of clothes and luggage from the hospital back to Veteran Lane. Seeing the dark window of their home's second bedroom, she instinctively bit her lip, pulled out a key, and opened the door. It's Sis. Sis is really back. I knew Big Bro wouldn't lie to me. Hearing noises at the door, the two little ones initially felt scared. But seeing it was Anna, who had been gone for days, they rushed over, clinging to her leg like koalas, holding on as if letting go would mean she'd escape again. Yes, Sis is back. Dragging two little koalas, she walked forward 2 steps, working hard to set her luggage on the table. The frail girl, like a mother coming home from work, lovingly patted the heads of her younger siblings and then bent down to give each a kiss, smiling warmly. Were you both good while I was gone? Did you cause any trouble for Big Bro? Upon hearing Anna's question, the atmosphere in the room tensed up slightly. The two little ones instinctively exchanged a glance. In Melanie's panicked expression, gullible William honestly said, "We were good, but, no, we didn't do anything." Seeing her sister's eyes narrow, Melanie turned her small head, glaring fiercely at her dopey brother before admitting reluctantly, "We weren't causing trouble. It's just Jack and the others were being annoying. They insisted you wouldn't come back and we got really mad, so we kind of played a little prank on them." After hearing Melanie's explanation, seeing her sister's aggrieved look, Anna's heart ached slightly, and she reached out to stroke her messy blonde hair. The fault didn't entirely lie with their mischief. It was partly Anna's own fault. Before she became ill this time, she had a premonition that she might not come back, so she had arranged with families in the neighborhood, asking them to help cover up the truth so her brother could continue receiving her pension. Jack was a kid from the alley too, and from one of those families. He probably overheard their parents slip and told during some roughhousing, upsetting Melanie and her brother. William was quiet and steady, likely just stewing in his anger silently until he could complain after her return. But Melanie, with her cunning and petty nature, must have immediately come up with a plan for revenge, dragging honest William along under the pretense of protecting his sister. Judging by her hesitant demeanor, they must have wreaked havoc in the neighborhood for days. You, sigh, pinching her sister's supple cheek, smoother than a boiled egg. The frail girl sighed and shook her head, thinking of how badly they had been scared these last few days. Initially wanting to be gentle, in the end, she hardened her heart and scolded sternly, "Don't try to trivialize this. Confess truthfully. What have you two little rascals been doing these past few days? If it's not too serious, I'll take you to apologize tomorrow, and we'll call it even. But if it's worse than last time, no matter the reason, you'll both get a spanking today." Hearing Anna's words, Melanie couldn't help but shiver, clutching her dress nervously while her eyes darted around. Well, if it's not too serious, it might be a bit much, but if it's serious, it's probably not that. Mostly, quit with the umps and buts. I knew the minute we shoved horse dung in Jack's mouth, we wouldn't escape a spanking this time. Sis, I've calculated. If I'm being spanked, just double the usual amount for me, and as for Melanie, you better make it 5 times as much as before. Ugh, I really must have owed you in my past life. Are you really my brother? You're, ugh, you're clearly here to collect debts. If I had known this earlier, before you were even, ugh, before you were even born, I should have, ugh, I should have just fought you directly. Wah, wah, wah. I'm sorry, sister. Ugh. Lower your hand a bit. Don't wear yourself out. Ugh. When Leon came back to Veteran Lane carrying 2 stacks of newspapers, before he even reached the door, he heard his little sister's heart-wrenching cries and the crisp sound of a hand spanking a bottom from a distance away. In addition to that, there were 6 or 7 smelly little kids standing from afar, wiping their tears and clapping with joy in the direction of Leon's house. Wah, wah, wah. Finally, Sister Anna is back. Yeah. I've been waiting for this day to come. I've also waited several days for this. She's finally getting spanked. Sister Anna should live a long life because no one else can manage her. All right then. I think I know what's going on here. Glancing at the pitiful little kids and spotting some undigested horse manure stuck in one of their teeth, Leon's face darkened. He quickly raised the newspapers to cover his face and slipped quietly toward his house. Under the regretful gaze of the little kids, before Leon could reach the door, the sound of spanking abruptly stopped. Anna, in her white dress and with red eyes, opened the door and called out to Leon. Bro, let's talk inside. Let's talk inside. Feeling uncomfortable from the piercing gaze of the little kids, Leon quickly supported Anna's shoulder and pushed her back into the house. Then he hurriedly put down the boards covering the windows, finally feeling slightly better after blocking out the little kids' prying eyes. Wah, big brother, I'm sorry. And once both Leon and Anna stepped inside, before Anna could even begin to complain, the well-versed Melanie rushed over and clung to Leon's leg, refusing to let go. As she dodged Anna's attempts to catch her, Melanie spilled the beans like a rapid-fire monologue, explaining the whole incident in just a few sentences. Why not? Let's just leave it at that today. After hearing the rough context, Leon, not having the heart to scold, sighed as he looked at Melanie's eyes swollen like 2 small peaches. He resignedly stepped into the role of peacemaker and gently advised. Shoving horse manure into someone's mouth warrants a spanking, but those kids said some things they shouldn't have. Melanie shouldn't be entirely blamed for mischief this time, and just by looking at her, she probably knows she was wrong. She doesn't know she's wrong. Seeing Melanie galloping around Leon and secretly glaring at William, Anna also wiped away tears and angrily said, Brother, you don't even know what happened. Our family has barely made it to today. How much have we benefited from the neighbors? And this is how we repay them? Don't stop me. If she dares to shove horse manure into someone's mouth today, who knows what she'll do in the future? If I don't spank her good this time, she'll definitely dare next time. You're right, brother. Just when both sides were at an impasse, and Leon hesitated whether to let go, William, with his pants still down, suddenly turned around with a serious face and chimed in. This afternoon, Melanie told me she thinks she's in for a spanking when sister comes back. But if something like this happens again, she'd do it again except change her methods. She thinks that while horse manure is big, it doesn't smell as bad as cat or dog poop. So yesterday afternoon she made me collect a bunch of dog poop with her, insisting on hiding it in my old shoes to try out tomorrow. Bro, I really think you guys should give her a good spanking. I'm going to fight you. Caught off guard by the utter betrayal, Melanie first let out a desperate scream, then released Leon's leg and pounced toward William with her teeth bared. But she was short-limbed and moved slowly, so she'd barely lunged half a step before Anna grabbed her, flipped her over a knee, pulled down her pants, and spanked her without mercy. I'll teach you to fight him. Who do you want to fight? Huh. Not fighting, not fighting. I was just joking. I'll teach you to joke. Does that mean you'll joke about not daring next time too? No. That's real. It's real. It's real? So trying dog poop tomorrow is real too? Is it? Answer me. It's not. It's not. You're being unreasonable. Forget it. Anna knows more about handling the kids. I better not interfere blindly, or we'll end up raising them wrong. Glancing sympathetically at Melanie's swollen bottom, Leon turned toward his brother, still standing there with his pants down, and couldn't help but say, "Maybe you should pull up your pants." "It's okay, bro." Little William shook his head knowingly, then flexed his fingers with confidence and said, "I calculated it. Sister still owes me 15 more spankings, so if I pull them up now, I'll just have to take them off again later. I'll put them back on after it's all done." Even without questioning your calculation, just judging from the intense battle over there, I can tell Anna won't have time to spank you today. All right then, be careful not to catch a cold. With a speechless reminder to his single-minded brother, Leon picked up the 2 stacks of old newspapers in his hands and went towards his small bedroom. Leon originally planned to buy some new newspapers. However, he found his pockets embarrassingly empty and realized he wouldn't have enough to last until payday. So he went back to the Purification Bureau to ask around and finally got some from Senior Emma, who had the habit of subscribing to newspapers. After all, Leon wasn't looking to get news from the newspapers. He just wanted to find the boldest newspapers based on their reporting topics to create a fuss with the water power company's issue. It didn't matter whether the paper was new or old, as long as there was something to read. Plopping down in front of the old table with a broken leg, he spread out the newspapers and his expression turned serious as Melanie's cries echoed in the background. Page after page, he leafed through the recycled newspapers he'd gathered. Corner Alley News, Financial Times, Dance Entertainment News, New Industry News. Forget these. They mostly seemed to be about happenings in specific industries, not much on social news. Pictorial News, Commentators News, The Sun News were also out. The first 2 seemed to have old nobility backgrounds and were filled with praises for that old system. The last one was a damned newspaper just by its name. Definitely not a choice, so it seemed that only 3 were left to choose from. Sifting through a large stack of newspapers, Leon finally settled on Daily News, Royal Mail News, and Capital Evening News. As he pondered over which one to choose, the door to the side room suddenly got knocked. "Bro, sister's done with the spanking." With his pants now up, William appeared at the door. He first sniffed vigorously, then clasped his hands behind him, puffed out his chest, and suggested like a little adult, "Melanie should be okay. Sister didn't spank too hard. Just have her lie down for a bit to recover." But sister went straight to her room crying after. "Shouldn't you go and console her?" Of course, he had to do some persuading. Though Anna's condition had stabilized, she had just been discharged from the hospital not long ago. Breaking down wouldn't be good for her health. After patting his little brother on the head, who was clever yet naive, Leon put down the newspaper he was holding, got up and left the small bedroom, heading towards Anna's room. This old house on Veteran Lane wasn't the original home of Leon and his siblings. It was an old house that the military assigned to them after withholding part of their pension, and it was almost 5 times their age. The whole house was old and worn out, with mediocre lighting and no bathroom. Except for a small living room connected to the kitchen, it only had 1 master bedroom and 1 small bedroom. The smaller bedroom had always been occupied by Leon. As for what was called Anna's room, it was actually the master bedroom shared by her and her 2 younger siblings. Squeak! Accompanied by the rusty, grating creak of the old door hinge, Leon pushed open the door of the master bedroom and immediately saw his sister sobbing into the bedding. Like the small bedroom where Leon stayed, this tiny master bedroom also had only 1 single bed. When William and Melanie were younger, they could barely fit, but as the 2 mischievous ones grew a bit older, it became somewhat cramped. So, Leon had picked up some planks and bricks from outside and extended the old bed, laying down a mattress and their parents' old clothes, hoping that his younger siblings could sleep more comfortably. However, due to the material used, the makeshift part was slightly unstable, and the bedboard often wobbled. Anna was lying on this part of the bedboard. With each muffled sob she let out, the newly added half of the bed wobbled twice, causing her bottom to jiggle along with the sobs, making the sight amusing enough for Leon to stifle a laugh. "Brother, you're laughing." Upon hearing Leon's muffled laugh, Anna, who was lying on the bed, got even angrier and, in a rare show of temper, kicked her small white feet in the air in frustration. Then, unable to hold back, she started to complain. "It's all because of you spoiling them. When they used to make trouble, you always stopped me from beating them. Now they're stuffing horse manure into someone's mouth. And you can still laugh about it." Ah! Embarrassed to explain why he was laughing, Leon had to avert his gaze and, while surveying the room's setup, distractedly said, "I just think that spanking might not be enough. They need to know why they're being punished so they don't think getting a beating makes causing trouble okay. If you don't believe me, look at William. He's already figured out from experience how many spankings to expect for different types of mischief. Proves they still need good reasoning. But only after getting spanked will they listen to your reasoning." Anna, who was always gentle and barely opinionated in front of Leon, was exceedingly strong-willed when it came to educating her younger siblings. After wiping her tears with the back of her hand and stopping her sobbing, she turned around, pouting dissatisfiedly as she argued, "You spend too little time with them to know how annoying those two can be. Melanie isn't clueless about right and wrong. She just thinks she can get away with it by being sly. William worries me even more. Though he's not much for causing trouble himself, his ideas are always bizarre, like. She thought for quite some time, unable to find the words to describe her little brother's peculiar train of thought, before pounding the bedboard in frustration and summing it up. "Anyway, they need discipline. If we don't, it's too late once they're grown. Yes, discipline. Definitely need discipline. Next time, I absolutely won't stop you." Echoing her words, Leon walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, gently stroking his sister's back as he softly comforted her. "But you should also try to look on the bright side. Although they are indeed a bit naughty, they've never bullied anyone on purpose. In several previous incidents, it wasn't entirely their fault either. Let me think." After recalling the few situations he remembered, Leon spoke with a slightly complex expression. "This time they caused trouble because someone said you weren't coming back. The last time was during a game when a kid called William a wild child. And before that, they stopped that chubby kid named Jack from bullying others. Even earlier, I was driven away while working as a longshoreman because I was too weak to do the job, and there was gossip in the alley. And even before that, it was because your coughing at night was too loud and disturbed the neighbors' rest, and they called you a sick freak." The more they recalled why the younger siblings caused trouble, the more uncomfortable Leon and Anna looked. They hadn't thought much of it before, but now they realized that although those two were very naughty, almost every time they caused trouble, it was not without reason. So, rather than calling them naughty, it might be more accurate to say they were trying, in their own way, to protect their fragile little home. If only he, as their older brother or sister, could have been more capable and shielded them from life's malice, maybe the younger ones wouldn't have needed to be so naughty, and they could happily be two lively, innocent kids. Let's not think about all that right now. Seeing the tears welling up in his sister's eyes again and realizing his attempts to comfort her weren't working, Leon quickly changed the subject. He reached for a yellowing old photo album on the shelf beside the bed, wrapped his arm around Anna's thin shoulders and said, "Brother has a job at the police department now, and by the end of the year, when he becomes a permanent employee, William and the others will be able to attend school for free. They won't have to fight with the kids in the alley anymore. So let's leave the past behind. Our family will definitely get better and better in the future. By the way, the last time we looked at the photo album together was more than 2 years ago when I had a high fever. It's still not too late today, so if you're not feeling unwell, would you flip through it with me again? MM." Anna leaned into Leon's shoulder lightly, following his gentle nudge. She accepted the photo album with reddened eyes, nostalgically caressed the damaged cardboard cover, and then started to flip through it softly. This is Mother when she was young. On the first page of the album, Anna pointed at a faded group photo where a woman who bore some resemblance to Leon, exuding vigorous spirit in her military uniform, was present. She explained softly, "When I was little, Mother told us that this was when she got into the mechanic academy and was assigned to the artillery adjustment class. And then here's Father." Anna's soft finger moved up slightly, pointing to a tall, handsome man with black hair in the back row, smiling warmly. Father and mother were originally classmates. After graduation, they were drafted into the same unit, so they gradually got to know each other. Then they had you, and the following year they had me. As Anna gently and slowly turned the pages of the album, Leon's mood improved while looking at the unfamiliar man and woman, from acquaintance to love, eventually in formal attire and wedding dress, emotionally embracing in a small chapel with happy tears. Unlike the cold and harsh reality, the happy moments captured in the album appeared so warm. Even though they had severely faded with time, they did not diminish the brilliance and radiance of those smiles at all. Could it be that Anna was such a lively child when she was younger? The enviable happiness continued in the album. Leon could not help but reach out and gently stroke little Anna's bright golden hair as he looked at the photo of the little blonde girl with an incredibly bright smile. In his memory, aside from softly nodding and smiling with gentle eyes, the Anna he knew only left the coughing misery behind her covered lips and the occasional deeply furrowed brows. He had never seen his sister smile so happily before. What had taken that smile away from her? As he realized that more than half of the album was flipped through, with no sign of Melanie or the others, the unspoken answer naturally emerged in his heart. I just remembered. I still have some unfinished work. Knowing clearly the cruel end that awaited the incredibly beautiful family in the album, Leon's body couldn't help but stiffen slightly. Annoyed at himself for suggesting such a foolish idea of looking at the album, he apologized to Anna with a hint of regret. Perhaps we should stop here? You must be tired today as well. It's best to rest early. The slender girl responded softly, seemingly unaware of Leon's abnormality, and directly closed the album in her hands, lightly nodding with a gentle smile. However, after Leon hurriedly left, Anna did not get up. Instead, she reopened the heavy old album and slowly turned to the last page. On the already yellowed back cover of the album, where the most important photo was supposed to be, an old, torn photo was attached. The person who tore the photo must have exerted a lot of force, ripping it into pieces and then crumpling them forcefully, resulting in many raised cracks. Even though it seemed carefully handled, it still couldn't be flattened completely, and even the faces in the portrait were incomplete. In this strange photo, the couple who appeared several times earlier in the album and had been deceased for 6 years, still smiled blissfully at the camera, embracing each other under a sign that read, "Family Portrait," in cursive. However, instead of 2 brothers and 2 sisters in front of them, there was just a single child around 8 or 9 years old, holding the father and mother's hands on either side, flashing an incredibly happy smile at the camera. Reaching out to touch the child's face in the photo, pressing down the raised parts of the cracks, which revealed golden hair as bright as the mother's, Anna couldn't help but bite her lips forcefully as she looked at the girl's face, which now seemed so unfamiliar to her. Then, as if making a firm decision, she used her nails to scrape off the glued-together torn photos one by one, later finding a matchbox and a small bucket in the room, throwing all the pieces into the iron bucket. After turning her eyes reluctantly, Anna struck a match with a scratching sound, lighting a tuft of cotton and tossing it into the bucket, burning the last photo of her parents and herself to black ash at the bucket's bottom. There seemed to be something I forgot to do yesterday. Unaware of what transpired after he left last night, as an employee with no vacation, Leon crawled out of his small bed as soon as dawn broke. After taking out a scrawled piece of paper he used as a memorandum, he helplessly realized that, due to worrying about making Anna recall sad memories, he had slipped away midway through the photo viewing and forgot to confirm his birthday with her. Now, Leon thought that William and the 2 of them probably hadn't woken up yet, right? Then he should wait until he got back tonight to ask. Looking at the main bedroom, which was still dark, Leon shook his head and abandoned the idea of asking now. Instead, he held a stack of old newspapers, quietly pushed the door open, left the house under the stars, and began his walk to work in the early morning light. Where was the coffee stand? When he reached about the same spot as the past few days, Leon was a bit surprised to find that, despite the perfect temperature for setting up shop, The con artist with the same name as Charles department store didn't show up today. After searching the two nearby streets and finding no trace of old Charles, Leon finally gave up on getting the promised half-priced coffee, and with a gloomy face, he headed to another small stand across the street and ordered the cheapest coffee. He had to admit, although old Charles' coffee stand was a money grubber and stingy with its portions, the customer experience was really top-notch, unmatched by other coffee stands. Even though the servings at this small stand were generous, they just didn't have the same flavor as the old Charles. With a rather regretful sigh, Leon gulped down the slightly too hot coffee in a few swigs. As he was about to get up and leave, he glanced over at a nearby table and spotted a somewhat familiar face. That person, wasn't he also a regular at Old Charles? After recognizing the face and confirming he wasn't mistaken, Leon hesitated briefly, then quickly walked over. "Hello, excuse me." Pointing towards the street across, before Leon could voice his question, the familiar customer, raising his eyebrows in sudden realization, spoke first. "Hey, isn't this old Charles' chosen son-in-law?" "Oh? What? I just drank his coffee a few times and I even paid for it. How did I end up as his son-in-law?" Seeing Leon, who was utterly confused by this address, the roughly 50-some customer laughed twice and briefly explained the origin of this title, then asked with a smile, "You came to talk to me because you wanted to know why old Charles didn't set up his stand today, right?" "I actually know this." Gesturing for Leon to sit down as well, the 50-something familiar customer continued, "I ran into him last night. It seems like his wife went into business with someone, and unfortunately, she fell into a trap set by partners and lost quite a bit of money, causing her to faint on the spot. Although his wife was lucky enough to be saved by a kind-hearted young man passing by, and there was no serious harm, she'll probably need a half-month to recover. Old Charles told me he needed to take care of his wife and also seek justice from those people, so he certainly wouldn't be setting up his stand for a few days. Doing business. Trapped. Losing a lot of money. Fainting on the spot. Saved by a kind-hearted young man passing by. Why did this sound so familiar? After hearing about the other Charles wife's ordeal, Leon awkwardly scratched the back of his head, feeling that the coincidences in this world were indeed somewhat outrageous. Honestly, if what I did at the hydraulic company could count as passing by, then the ordeals of these two Charles wives were not much different. As for whether these two Charles wives could be the same person, and whether the old Charles selling coffee on the street could be the same Charles from Charles department store, how could that be possible? After considering the likelihood of such a bizarre coincidence, Leon couldn't help but smirk and mercilessly mock himself inwardly. Running into a coffee-selling uncle at a street stand, who turned out to be one of the capital city's top 3 billionaires, and during an assignment yesterday, I happened to save the billionaire's wife's life, only to hear this morning that the billionaire seemed to be considering me as a future son-in-law to inherit his capital city-spanning department store chain. Yeah, right, as if you're the protagonist. After chatting a bit with the regulars at Old Charles' coffee stall, Leon, who was just one step away from becoming a wealthy man's son-in-law, finally braved the cold autumn wind and shuffled towards work. We can only lament that it's hard to go from luxury to frugality, not just mentally, but even physically. If it were the old Leon, he would often have to get up early to find work even in the bone-chilling winters, where people's faces would turn blue from the cold. The mild chill of autumn wouldn't have bothered him at all. However, after getting accustomed to the sweet aroma of warmth in that little tent, just missing the comfort by the stove made him shiver uncontrollably. He jogged all the way, only stopping to catch his breath near the Purification Bureau building. Not bad, not bad. Full of energy, aren't you? From the window of the director's office on the first floor, he saw Leon jogging up for work. The red-haired woman, holding a cup of hot water, pushed open the slightly ajar window. Leaning her curvaceous figure gently on the windowsill, she smiled and waved at Leon, arching her brows as she asked, "Little Leon, how's the investigation at the water company going? Did you find any anomalies?" Although he knew she was teasing him, not really asking whether he found an anomalous object, but whether he found evidence of the water company's misconduct, Leon's expression couldn't help but freeze slightly at the thought of the blonde, middle-aged man from the Ryan family who'd come into contact with the black goat's heart. Noticing Leon's slight hesitation, the smile on the face of the red-haired director slightly faded, and she inquired with some surprise, "Is there really a trace of an anomalous object at the water company?" Asterisk, you guessed it, but although there's an anomalous object there, it's not the one causing mass illness. It's one of the parts of the Seven Sheep Tavern, lost after the black goat went crazy back then. Asterisk. Asterisk, speaking of which, even though the black goat is no more, it was still a great demon once. And I'm just a newcomer. Would the Purification Bureau allow me to hold two dangerous demonic anomalous objects simultaneously? Asterisk. Once again catching Leon's slight hesitation, the red-haired director not only withdrew her smile but also squinted her eyes. Are you hesitating to report to me? So this anomalous object is special, beneficial to you, but you might not get approval if reported? Let me think. The anomalous object you found at the water company wouldn't happen to be part of that dead goat's missing bits, right? Asterisk, no way. I haven't said a single word yet. Asterisk. Seeing how the red-haired woman almost accurately guessed the truth based on less than a second of hesitation, Leon, who originally wanted to say something, fell silent for the third time. Asterisk, this is too outrageous. Does she have some kind of mind-reading anomalous object? Asterisk. Don't worry, I can't read minds. Asterisk, oh, so you can't read minds, huh? Then I can seriously? You can hear what I'm thinking, and you're saying you can't read minds. Asterisk. Seeing Leon outside, who was clearly startled and full of vigilance in his eyes, the red-haired director couldn't help but chuckle. I wasn't lying. I really can't read minds. After placing the steaming cup on the windowsill, she rested her face in her hand, smiling as she explained, I used to frequently play hide-and-seek with the infector hidden among ordinary people, so I've gotten used to judging from people's expressions and behaviors. And you just happen to be the type whose emotions are written all over his face, so I coincidentally guessed right a few times. I don't believe you for a second. Regarding the explanation from the red-haired director, Leon truly didn't believe a single word. Asterisk, though I'm not particularly cunning, I don't usually show my emotions on my face. The folks on Veteran Lane also described me as someone who's more quiet and reserved. How could she guess right this many times in a row? She must be pulling my leg. Asterisk. Truly, I'm not lying. Though your expressions aren't many, your eyes are overflowing. Seeing Leon, who despite having a myriad of thoughts running through his mind, still strained to keep a straight face, the corners of the red-haired director's mouth turned up, and she pointed at Leon's eyes from afar with a finger. For instance, right now, there's frustration from being seen through, a wariness and suspicion about whether I can really read minds, as well as a relaxation and ease from not needing to hide from me. And a little bit of an uncontrollable urge. Looking down at her slightly open neckline due to leaning forward, the red-haired director covered the exposed fair skin, then lazily stood up, stretching, and beckoned to the slightly embarrassed Leon. Come to my office. Let's have a good chat. So that's it. The heart of that dead goat is actually at the Ryan house. Having had an earnest conversation with Leon following his discovery at the water company, the red-haired director first nodded with a face of realization, then without hesitation, assigned Leon a new task. Something of this level can't be left unchecked. It'd be best to find a way to infiltrate for investigation, and as for a reason. Seeing Leon's face, the red-haired director's eyes lit up, and she cheerily suggested, how about seeking kinship? Seeking kinship? Yes, seek kinship. It just so happens you're also named Ryan. Isn't that the perfect excuse? Facing Leon's surprised expression, the red-haired director smiled and said, as long as you go with your Purification Bureau ID, claiming you're investigating the possibility of Ryan family bloodline, and considering your bright future of becoming an assistant-level official by 16 or 17, even the renowned Duke of Lionheart family wouldn't turn you away. But my hair isn't blonde. Oh, come on. Hair is easy. Just dye it. But I was planning to report them. Reporting is reporting, and seeking kinship is seeking kinship. It's not mutually exclusive. If you really don't want to go, I can assign you a different task. Seeing Leon still seeming to want to refuse, the red-haired director, having found a bit of amusement, put on a straight face, pulled out a pile of task files from a drawer, and spread them out on the desk. The Bafarley Forest has had 2 weeks of bloody rain, with nearly 1,000 animals dying of thirst near the water source. Adolph Manor has appearances of a 5-meter-tall giant beast, wreaking havoc and injuring many. Lane County's overseas port has numerous shipwrecks, possibly due to attacks by a large seafolk tribe. Hunch Valley's coal fields have collapsed on a large scale, possibly due to tens of thousands of sandworms hollowing out the mountain. These are the few tasks you might still manage to complete. You choose. Bizarre bloody rain. A 5-meter-tall giant beast. Underwater-dwelling seafolk. Sandworms that can hollow out a mountain. Speechlessly smacking his lips, Leon resignedly volunteered to say, "I think I'll go seek kinship. That's more like it." After stuffing a large stack of files marked completed back into the drawer, the red-haired director smiled at Leon, who looked utterly resigned, and explained with a grin, "I'm not intentionally forcing you. The consensus in our department has always been to assign tasks to those whose abilities fit the job. For example, Emma. She has the undying body to protect her life, so the tasks she receives often involve physical damage but rarely involve spiritual entities like ghosts. Take that giant beast reported from Adolph Manor. It's a task she will be completing, and you, with your ability to gather intelligence on anomalous objects through touch, and that dead sheep by your side allowing you to see the state of other souls, you can directly tell if they're lying. With these 2 abilities, you're basically a born investigator. If I don't let you go, who else should?" Well, that's true. After thinking about the methods he currently had, Leon couldn't help but nod in agreement. With the abilities he currently possessed, investigating was indeed more suitable than dealing with something like a downpour of blood or a 5-meter-tall giant beast. Even if the kinship recognition failed, he should be able to retreat unharmed, right? Recalling the black goat's excited demeanor upon discovering the heart's whereabouts, Leon hesitated for a moment before speaking up worriedly. "Director, it's not that I want to refuse the investigation task, but if that heart is similar to the corner and can detect the presence of other parts, and has controlled the members of the Ryan family, I'm worried I might be besieged and might not be able to escape." "Don't worry. I've considered that as well." Surveying Leon's physique, the red-haired director hesitated, then reached out to tug at a few strands of her vibrant red hair, handing them over. "With this and the witch's broom, it should be enough to protect most situations. But don't touch it yet." With a slight flick of her slender wrist, dodging Leon's reaching hand, the red-haired director warned seriously, "It can protect you on its own and doesn't require your physical or mental energy. But before I give you this, you must promise me, absolutely, absolutely, don't touch it with your hands." "Don't touch it with my hands." Does that mean she doesn't want me to know its details? Never mind. Just pretend I didn't say anything. Seeing Leon looking somewhat puzzled, the red-haired director seemed a bit regretful, quickly retracting her hand and waving off. "Emma's task is almost finished. You can stay in the department for a few days. Once she returns, I'll have her take you on the investigation task. Her bandages are about as effective as these strands of hair and can protect you as well." Hearing that Senior Emma was needed to protect him, Leon, the freeloading Leon, couldn't help but feel slightly embarrassed, his masculine pride driving him to extend his right hand directly. "Then just give it to me. I promise not to touch it with my Feeling slightly embarrassed under the red-haired director's gaze as if watching a fool, Leon hurriedly pulled up his sleeve with his left hand, revealing his wrist. "You misunderstood. I reached out not to have you place the hair in my hand, but to tie it directly on my wrist. The wrist is still not safe. You might accidentally touch it." After shaking her head and rejecting Leon's suggestion, the red-haired director moved closer, then reached out to hook Leon's back of the neck, pulling him towards her embrace. Lower your head, and I'll tie the hair around your neck. Okay. Seeing the pair coming dangerously close to his nose tip, Leon only felt his ears heat up slightly. He quickly closed his eyes, slightly arched his back, and straightened his neck, waiting for the red-haired director to tie the hair. However, lower your head even more. I can't reach it. Hearing the soft, sultry voice in his ear, Leon felt his heart race, and the blood in his brain began rushing uncontrollably to his ears. He seemed to hear the swishing of the hot blood flowing through his ears. Lower, lower, and I'll be buried in it. Although he secretly took a glance before entering the building, that was really just a little accident, almost instinctively glancing and immediately, politely diverted his gaze. But now, if he responded to the director's invitation and directly buried his head in it, that would truly cement him as a creep, and no river could wash that reputation clean. Instinctively clenching his fist slightly, Leon awkwardly reminded, I'm afraid lowering my head might be inconvenient. How about you tiptoe a bit? What am I tipping for? Seemingly impatient, the red-haired director urged. It's just a matter of you bending over. Why should I be tipping? Hurry up and move. Though I didn't intend to take advantage of it, I've already pointed it out this much. Maybe, never mind, I'll remind her again, to make the other party understand that now wasn't the suitable time to continue lowering his head. Leon had to take a deep breath, releasing it forcefully through his nose. Aya! As a coquettish complaint sounded, Leon didn't hear retreating footsteps. He instead heard the red-haired director's lament again. Why are you blowing on my chest? Stop fooling around. Lower your head quickly. I still have a lot of work to do. I've really tried. Yes, that's the right way to lower your head. Seeing Leon, eyes closed, lowering his head in resignation, the red-haired director nodded with a smile but quickly urged again. Did you just lower it by a millimeter? Lower it some more. A bit lower, it's still not enough. Lower, lower. Lower? I've already bent to a 90-degree angle. Even if you were a little lapdog standing on your hind legs, you should be able to reach. Continuing to lower it any further was clearly a setup. Feeling utterly speechless, Leon simply opened his eyes, and unsurprisingly, instead of seeing this and that, what greeted him was the slightly worn wooden floor of the director's office. As for the red-haired beauty previously standing in front of him, she had already returned to her seat behind the desk, sipping hot water, gleefully continuing her lower, lower chant. Don't be mad. Seeing Leon's expression turn dark, the red-haired director put down the cup, leaned back in her chair with a grin. You first hid the matter of Yang Exan from me, then sneaked a peek when I had a wardrobe malfunction. I wasn't angry with you for either of these things. Now I just played a little joke on you, so you can't be upset. Don't move. Let me tie the hair on for you first. Stretching her index finger, she drew a circle in the air, controlling the hair to tie around Leon's neck with a delicate little bow. The red-haired director smiled. Nice you managed to keep your eyes closed for so long, not sneaking any peeks, even when you had an excuse not to take advantage. Now I can trust you'll keep your promise. Remember, now that the hair is tied around your neck, it's equivalent to my chest. If you inadvertently glance at it, I won't blame you. But if you dare touch it, don't blame me for losing my temper. I won't touch it. Even if it were really yours, I wouldn't be interested, okay? You're truly unbelievable. After being playfully pranked with half a test and half teasing, Leon couldn't help but glare at the red-haired director, feeling that the black goat's evaluation of her was indeed spot on. When she had alcohol, she was a big drinker, and when she didn't, she was a mischievous troublemaker. Either she made a fool of herself when drunk, providing entertainment for others, or when sober, she was filled with mischief, always looking to have fun with others. In short, she was never at peace. By the way, her office had been so clean these past 2 days. Why hadn't there been any empty bottles piled up? Was he? looking for the empty bottles of alcohol he drank with me? Seeing Leon constantly glancing behind his desk as if searching for something, the red-haired director was reminded of the debt-ridden binge they had earlier, and her heart tightened. Her gaze towards Leon suddenly grew dangerous. She gave a half-smile and remarked, "What? You're not willing to leave after not getting your way? You must be joking. I actually have another thing I'd like to ask." Upon hearing her words, Leon snapped back to reality and remembered his serious business. He discreetly clenched his fists and asked with a serious expression, "If it's confirmed that the Black Goat's heart is with the Ryan family, then after completing the mission and retrieving it, would I have a chance to gain the right to use its heart?" "Well, that's really hard to say. It depends on your luck. If it's not you who personally retrieves the anomalous object, and you want to reclaim it, you'd first have to see if anyone of higher rank than you wants to compete. Let me put it this way." The red-haired director thought for a moment, then picked up the dip pen on the desk. She found a piece of scrap paper and quickly drew 5 circles from top to bottom on the back. "If these 5 circles represent the hierarchy of our Purification Bureau, then the top one is for the director and the 12 directors. Although the director is half a rank higher than the 12 directors, if more than half of the directors reach a consensus, they can veto the director's proposal. If they reach 3/4, they can even remove him, so the director and the directors are barely considered the same rank." The red-haired director moved the pen tip down to the second circle, leaving a big ink spot, and continued to explain, "Next, there are 87 branches. You should know what the zodiac signs are, right? Our 12 zodiac branches are considered major bureaus, while the other 75 branches are considered minor bureaus. The chiefs of the major bureaus are generally stronger than the minor bureau chiefs, holding a half rank higher in status, though they can also be broadly considered the same rank. Apart from the first-level directors and the level 2 branch directors, the remaining 3 circles are for the level 1, 2, and 3 disorder handlers like you." Picking up the pen to write a 1 in the 3rd circle, the red-haired director smiled and said, "First, there are the first-level disaster handlers. Those assigned to this level are usually the ace employees of each bureau, capable of independently leading teams to handle large-scale disasters. When a vacancy arises among the chiefs of the 75 minor branches, the outstanding individuals among these ace employees can be immediately appointed by the approval of the directors. Emma is currently at this level." Senior Emma, an ace employee? Hearing the familiar name, Leon couldn't help but be slightly stunned, feeling a strange sense of a primary school classmate appearing on TV. The main impression Senior Emma had left on him was of a careful and gentle, reliable senior, not really fitting the image of such a strong businessperson, especially considering that the first task she took him on almost went disastrously wrong. Did little Leon think Emma was very weak? Seemingly guessing Leon's thoughts, the red-haired director tapped the 1 inside the circle with the pen tip and cheerfully said, "Asterisk, the reason why things went wrong at the hospital before was primarily because the other side was backed by a true god, with a foundational hierarchy too high. She was first infected, touching the core rules of the opponent's ability, making the anomalous objects she carried ineffective, which led to her capture. Additionally, the main anomalous objects she possessed were too large. The bureau-provided boxes couldn't fit them, and they usually stayed in her office. She only took them out when confirmed they'd be needed. During the hospital incident, she couldn't exert even 1% of her strength. Since you have the ability of compulsory intelligence acquisition, when she returns, have her show you those treasures. You won't have any more doubts about her status as a first-level disaster handler. Asterisk. Asterisk, her entire room is filled with anomalous objects. Asterisk. After listening to the red-haired director's explanation, Leon recalled the things he saw while passing by Senior Emma's office window, and his pupils constricted slightly. Bandages, coffins, nailed boards, scrapers, skull crushers, crosses, iron maidens, execution platforms, skeletal specimens, curved scythes. Even without 50 pieces, there must be around 30 or 40 items in that room. Additionally, there seemed to be a few old boxes in her office corner that occasionally made strange noises. Heaven knows how many small items were in those. Goodness, how many anomalous objects did Senior Emma have? Asterisk. I knew it. Just telling you would give you quite a shock. Asterisk. Looking at the shocked expression on Leon's face in front of her, the red-haired director, satisfied with fulfilling her wicked sense of humor, let her lips curl up as she cheerfully continued. As for the remaining Level 2 crisis handlers and Level 3 incident handlers, just consider them as senior employees and regular employees for now. According to the Bureau's rules, a senior employee and 5 regular employees can form a team to handle some not too major regional crises. Still, in your case, you probably won't have the opportunity to participate in such team tasks. Huh? Why? Because although our bureau is a major bureau, due to some things I did in the past, most people have left, and we can't gather enough people for team tasks. Didn't you notice most of the offices on the first floor are empty? After helplessly shrugging, the red-haired director took a sip from a bottle, then regretfully said, although there are still 2 first-level ACE employees left in our bureau, there are very few Level 2 and Level 3 employees, less than 10 in total. More precisely, there are 9 Level 2 crisis handlers and 1 Level 3 incident handler remaining. 9 Level 2s and 1 Level 3. Doesn't that mean I'm the only regular employee? Upon hearing this, Leon had long forgotten what he initially wanted to ask and couldn't help but sarcastically comment. Our bureau's office building has 7 floors, to scare off the people filling 6 floors all at once. Director, what on earth did you do back then? Just something someone in my position is supposed to do, only perhaps a bit too drastic to accept. Besides, you got one thing wrong. Looking away and glancing outside the window, the red-haired director stared at the dry willow trees outside with a calm demeanor and stated, the top 6 floors aren't empty. They're filled with my anomalous objects. Your anomalous objects filled 6 entire floors? Stunned by this utterly outrageous answer, Leon didn't speak for quite a while. It wasn't until he saw the slight curve in the red-haired director's mouth that he realized he had been played yet again. As long as I can get the Yang Xian back, it's mine, right? Then I have no problem with it. After giving the red-haired directors back a glare, Leon, fooled twice, had no desire to continue wasting time with her nonsense. He left a parting remark and stormed out of the director's office with a scowl. After he slammed the door behind him, the red-haired woman gazed out the window, then slowly turned her head back. Her charming face was full of smiles, yet her eyes, clear and watery, held no hint of joy. Instead, they were as deep and cold as icy ponds. Things as they are now aren't actually that bad. Asterisk muttering to herself incoherently. A lonely look flickered in her gaze as she suppressed her smile, tipped back the glass of water, and drank it dry in one gulp. Then she slumped forward onto her desk like a drunken person and lay still. Soon, the office was filled with the steady sound of quiet snores. Asterisk. As the snores spread throughout the office, from the 2nd floor to the 3rd, 4th, and up to the topmost floor where all windows and vents were sealed to prevent any light from entering, countless tiny creatures began to emit quiet, nearly inaudible snores in unison. There's something like this going on. After finishing the records in hand about the Charl Power Company's illegal operations, the editor of the Daily News social section couldn't help but slam his fist lightly on the restaurant table in anger, then promised in a low voice full of indignation, dumping into the public water pipes. These damned bastards, is there nothing in their brains but money? I must blow the lid off this affair. With his finger lightly tapping a sheep's head, Leon glanced at the editor's face filled with anger, a thick disappointment flashing briefly across his own face, then nodded expressionlessly and started gathering the documents on the table. Since you've agreed, let's wrap it up for today. I hope you'll follow through once you get back. I absolutely will. Grabbing Leon's wrist, the editor of the Daily News stood up, full of enthusiasm, and promised, leave it all to me. Once I'm back, I'll definitely write this up truthfully, so those damned bastards get the punishment they deserve. By the way, these materials are still a bit flimsy. It might only lead to Charl Department Store paying fines, while the real culprits could get off scot-free. Do you have any other evidence against those 3 companies? Not for the time being. Seeing that there wasn't a trace of anger in the other's soul, instead filled with panic, conspiracy, and ill intent. Leon couldn't help the deep sense of disgust that flashed through his eyes. Suppressing the urge to punch the other's face, Leon, in disguise, pushed away his hand and expressionlessly packed the documents back into a folder. Then bid his farewell. "Editor, since you feel the evidence is insufficient, I'll take these back and organize them. Once I find enough evidence, I'll contact you again." "Ah, no need." Seeing Leon about to leave, the Daily News editor seemed a bit flustered and hurriedly grabbed his arm, pleading, "The victims are still waiting for compensation. Though these materials aren't complete, they're enough to get most people's attention. Why don't you leave them with me, and I'll draft a report first." "No need." "Why not?" Unable to bear any more, Leon shook off his hand and replied coldly, "Because if I hand them to you, this report might never see the light of day." He. He's figured it out. Huh? Seems this kid isn't as dumb as he looks. Watching Leon's cold and detached gaze, the Daily News editor's eyebrows twitched slightly, realizing Leon had figured out his intentions and wouldn't hand over the documents. Disdainfully scrutinizing Leon's only visible eyes, observing his thin frame and shabby clothing, the editor, who had just showered Leon with praise and warmth, now angled his mouth downward and sat back in his chair, calling out loudly, "Waiter!" Waving over the waiter who had been glancing in their direction, the Daily News editor pointed at Leon with a calm face and ordered, "Close the door and call over a couple of security guards. This man just stole my stuff, and the item is right there in his arms." "Yes, sir." Close the outer door. Taking a look at the Daily News editor, clad in a frock high-end suit with a folded silk pocket square, hat, tie, watch, and walking stick, topped off with high-top calfskin shoes, and glancing at Leon, wearing an ill-fitting, worn trench coat and a black kerchief covering his nose and mouth, the waiter barely used half a second to decide what to do. Even though the two had come in together, even though there was a table separating them, with no physical contact the entire time, even though the item the wealthy gentleman pointed to was something the masked man had been holding from the start, none of that influenced his judgment. After all, the customer is always right, and it was obvious that one of these individuals was not a customer of this establishment, wasn't he? Watching as 4 security guards were called over, blocking the booth's exit, Leon furrowed his brows, turning back with icy eyes to the editor of the Daily News, who was leisurely adjusting his tie. "You're going to resort to force?" "I'm not using force, just trying to save your life, and in turn, save the person you'll end up choosing." Carefully smoothing out the wrinkles in his tie, the Daily News editor, leaning on his cane, stood up and sauntered over. "You've been covering your face, but listening to your voice and watching your actions, you shouldn't be too old, right? Hey, young man, your sense of justice is admirable, but you clearly don't understand the ways of this world." Gently raising the long cane, wiping off the mud on Leon's pants, the Daily News editor smiled softly and said, "In our country, the royal family is the heart, the noble are the organs, the parliament is the brain, factories are the strongest muscles, merchants are the bone that constantly produces blood, and as for the rest, they are merely skin that sheds and regenerates, along with hair that renews itself in waves." Staring at the silent Leon, the editor's smile turned slightly sour, and he leaned in close, disdain evident in his eyes as he whispered only for the two of them to hear, "I ask you, when hair has a grievance against an organ, as the tongue, should I shout about it, stirring up the rest of the foolish hair and skin, creating more pointless chaos? Or would it be wiser to silence this troublesome hair, teaching it how to finally shut that damn mouth of its own?"